This episode of the Cult Pop Show podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scene at the end of each episode, or join us for our monthly movie club Zoom call where we discuss a film together, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopshow. I was a little bit off there, but that'll work out.
So you've recorded for 3 minutes early and you're a little bit off with the sync clap. Yeah. That's the start of the episode, everyone. Yeah. Hopefully we're talking in the proper sync. Welcome, everybody, to film franchise Fortnights on the Cult Pop Show podcast. My name is AJ, and I'm joined by this little scallywag over there, Richard, who just pulled a peace sign. Pulled a peace sign to who?
To you! You
to
fucking
me.
loser.
You did it like it was like we're in front of a crowd.
Yeah, I did
like,
it for you.
What's up, everybody?
Oh my god, I'm sorry. Oh, like
I
next you'll be
learned
like,
it from you,
and now
Dad.
he's giving his opinions on Death Note. For who? No one can see us.
This is a podcast.
We're in different cities. He's just sitting in a room talking to himself.
That is what it must look like from the outset.
Yeah.
This is a podcast where every fortnight we watch all of and then subsequently discuss on podcast form a film franchise. And I'm trying to explain this clearly up top because this is going to be an unconventional episode. So maybe I don't need to explain it clearly. Usually the film franchises are just that. They're things like
Divergent.
Divergent. Okay, sure. Like things that.
That's a book series as well. So
right.
I deliberately fooled you.
You deliberately disobeyed me. The Lion. We haven't actually done the Lion King, but yeah. Usually we cover film franchises, and this time we're covering what is technically a film franchise, but is more well known in other media, which we've done a few times. We've done with Yu-Gi-Oh, SpongeBob,
but
Sex and the
we
City.
will talk about this, but this is legitimately a film franchise.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
It's more of a film franchise than Divergent.
It's more of a film franchise than Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh, 100%.
Frankly.
It's not up for debate.
The Yu-Gi-Oh! When we did Yu-Gi-Oh!, which in my mind, this is a spiritual successor to for a few idiosyncratic reasons I'll explain in just a second. When we did Yu-Gi-Oh!, it wasn't these are the Yu-Gi-Oh! Movies. It was these are the movies that exist in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Intellectual property banner. Yeah. Because they weren't a series. You're not supposed to watch all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Movies together and be like, oh, this is the movies of Yu-Gi-Oh!
I've consumed it, yeah. Like, I know the story of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now. It's very much just snapshots. Like, we talked about that in that it's like, this isn't the Yu-Gi-Oh! Film franchise. This is the theatrically released pieces of Yu-Gi-Oh! Media.
Exactly. And so the Death Note movies consist of 5 films based either completely, loosely, or really not at all off the Japanese manga and probably more famous anime series of the same name. I didn't know that. Well, I did know it was a manga because they were all mangas.
They're all fucking mangas.
They're all fucking mangas. So the series, the generally in broad terms, Death Note, the manga, the anime, the movies, they focus on a cat and mouse game between an angsty Tokyo student who finds the supernatural and titular Death Note, a notebook gifted from beyond the mortal plane, which allows its owner to kill anyone as long as they write down their victim's name on one of the pages while picturing said victim's face. This is a run-on sentence, and it is also a cat and mouse game between this is the cat to that mouse, a world-renowned anonymous private investigator intent on discovering the true identity of the killer or the killer, which is what is it? It's like a colloquial term for killer.
It's the name that the public gives the killer.
Yeah. The first 4 films we're talking about today were produced in Japan and exist as part of the same film canon, with the first 2 installments directly adapting what I assume is the full 37-episode anime. I don't know that for a fact. I assume
you're wrong,
it's
but yeah.
It's the first
25 episodes.
Oh, really?
We'll get into
interesting.
that.
Okay. And the latter two movies are more or less original installments. The third takes its name from a manga, but is not an adaptation. It's like a James Bond situation,
Right, yeah.
where it takes the name but doesn't adapt the story. The last film that we'll talk about today is the American Netflix adaptation, which very loosely adapts the story in very broad strokes. Let's get this out of the way. Much like with Yu-Gi-Oh!, Richard has seen, loves, and rewatched it, the anime, while I had seen a couple of episodes of the anime. Couldn't get into it, so I am of course emceeing this episode.
I was thinking about this, and that's probably actually the best way to do it, because you're essentially the audience surrogate for the franchise, much like the audience. But like, if I was running this, I'd be like, "Oh, this is this bit in the anime," and like, whereas
I'd stop listening.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas you're able to, you can throw to me when there's a legitimate question you have about it.
Yeah,
and so I actually think this is Yu-Gi-Oh! Was a bit different, because that's like it's such a ridiculous franchise. The films are. You're not like, you're not supposed to be able to get the films, like, and whereas this is like, and that was also a guilty pleasure. I legitimately think Death Note is great, and the storyline and everything like that, and then because they're adaptations of it, that's you're getting a full story essentially.
Yeah, and so to emphasize, Richard rewatched the anime for this episode.
Yeah.
Just I didn't.
Yeah, so within the last 2 weeks, I've watched all 5 films and the entire anime.
Yeah. So the films we'll be talking about just quickly, they're called Death Note, Death Note, the last name, L Change the World, Death Note, Light Up the New World, and Death Note. So let's begin with the first Death Note. This came out in 2006. It was directed by Shusuke Kaneko, and what do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
70%.
It's got 78%. 8% higher. So this, I forgot I don't know if I mentioned, these are all live action movies as well.
Yeah, because there are 2
not animes.
Anime compilation films. We didn't watch those.
No. And this was supposed to be anime, according to our patrons. We would only watch anime. A prophecy I don't think is going to come to fruition.
But we'll see.
But we'll save that till the end of the episode. Yeah.
Did you also happen to look at Shusuke Kaneko's filmography?
No, I didn't.
He also directed Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out of Attack.
Jesus Christ, how old is he?
That came out in 2001.
Oh, sorry.
So it's 5
I thought
years.
that was one of the older ones.
He is 65, though, to answer your question.
Nice. Good age, I bet. What is Death Note 2006 about? And Richard, I really want you to concentrate on the question I just asked. I'm asking specifically, what is Death Note the movie 2006, the first one? If that was all you'd seen, what is that movie about?
Let me just. I just want to quickly.
Let me just pull up the Death Note manga Wikipedia
page. Okay, so
and spoilers for the whole series ahead. If you haven't seen it, but also that's fine.
I would say though that like there's a good movie. Like, we are going to spoil it completely, but it's a great story, and I would recommend, especially if you've seen the American one, that like watch what it's actually based on, because it is great. So Light Yagami is our protagonist, played by the main guy from Battle Royale. Which is also a great movie. So he's in high school. He's an intelligent guy, and
his high school is intelligent.
this Death Note mysteriously drops from the sky. The front page of it is a list of rules. The top one being the human whose name is written in this note shall die, and he is skeptical about it, obviously, but he decides to test it out. He sees a criminal and he does it, and then writes the name, and this criminal dies of a heart attack. And then he's visited by a Shinigami or a Reaper or Death God, depending on what version you watch. But I'm going to say Shinigami because that's like what's
That's the cooler phrase.
Yeah, exactly. Named Ryuk, who is the original owner of the Death Note and got bored one day and decided to drop it into the human world. And then essentially Light takes on this new power and of being able to just kill people from a distance, and decides to become god of a new world where there's no crime, because he's made criminals terrified. And so one of the kind of important things of the Death Note is that if you just write the person's name, in 40 seconds they'll die of a heart attack. Whereas you can write circumstances of their death, and you can also like manipulate their actions for a certain period of time leading up to their death. And so quite quickly, Kira, as he is dubbed by the public, becomes quite this powerful, omnipotent force. But then we meet the detective Al, who also goes by Ryuzaki, which is like his pseudonym, so that Kira can't kill him, because they work out that Kira needs a name and a face. Yeah, he's hot on the tails of Kira, and then this film ends. The point that this film gets up to is that there was an FBI agent tailing Light, and he manages to get to not only kill the FBI agent, but all 12 FBI agents that were tailing people, so that instead of just singling out his one, which would make him look like a suspect, he manages to kill all of them. And that's like his first real big, like, I'm killing people who threaten me, not just criminals. Yeah. And the guy he killed's fiance essentially works out that it's Light. And then he manages to create a situation using the Death Note where he essentially, to prove his own innocence and also get rid of her as a witness, he makes her kill herself in front of everyone.
And she also kills Light's girlfriend as well, which essentially makes Light seen as this victim in all of this. It ends with him meeting Al for the first time face to face, and Light's dad is the police chief, and he asks, "Hey, put me on the task force to help find Kira." So he orchestrated all of this so that he could be on the other side and be part of the investigation that's searching for himself instead of the target. That's the end of the first film. Smash cut to Danny California by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
So funny, man.
It's so funny. It's baffling. It's baffling. It's one of those beautiful, and I hope this isn't a mean-spirited thing to that I've observed. It's one of those beautiful things where, like, I can watch like a foreign language film and it'll be on the same wavelength completely, and then it's always like the song in the end credits. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
like
it's like a lost in translation kind of thing.
It's a lost in translation thing of like cultural association with music.
Yeah,
like, this is not the type of movie you end with Danny California.
Yeah. Because I mean, for us, it's like, I guess you watch this movie and you're like, wow, this is like a serious like detective thriller kind of thing. But in Japan, it's like, oh, it's a big budget adaptation of that thing you love.
Yeah. What did you think of this film?
I thought this film was so good. I was blown away by how good this film was.
Had you seen it before?
No, I hadn't, and I just assumed that they weren't very good, like the live action ones. But yeah, like I watched this as well. I watched this with the English dub, which uses the cast of the anime dubbing the characters, because I love the cast. They have Brad Swale, who from Barbie video game Hero plays Light Yagami. As I'm sure you'll remember from him. But yeah, like I thought it's such a like well-paced adaptation of the first third
section.
It's the first part of the series. And I mentioned the compilation movies of the anime. And so that's like I've got the first one on DVD, which leads up to, which is again the first like 25 episodes of the anime. And it's essentially the first two movies condensed into like a 2-hour thing, and it's horrible. It's so poorly paced. It just like instead of cutting out unnecessary plot threads and like subplots. It just puts every single one in at like breakneck speed. Whereas this like actually manages to adapt almost everything and be incredibly paced. It does have an extra 2 hours in extra film, but it's such a faithful adaptation of the story that I was blown away by it, and I was like, I didn't need to rewatch the anime. You know?
Yeah. It's because to my credit, I did start the anime to try and honor the thing you wanted to do. I just couldn't bring myself to watch any more than 3 episodes of it. And in like episode 2, there's like a fucking 5-minute section where he talks about how he's hiding the Death Note in his drawer and no one's gonna get it because it's booby trapped and all this. None of that is in the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is why the movie is works, because it's pacing. Okay, so here's the reveal that I didn't really try to hide if you're on the Discord. I loved this movie. I thought this was great. The only criticisms I have is I think it feels very cheap in parts.
Yeah.
It feels low budget. I think that, contrary to what you said, I think the beginning was paced a little too fast. It feels like...
You're the one that said it was well paced. I'm just like, you said to me the other day that you're like, this is so well paced, I can't imagine this being like a series.
Right, yeah.
And then I was like, oh, they're cool. That's free reign to talk about the pacing.
That is true, aside from the beginning, which feels like it expects you to be familiar already with the premise. It rushes through everything, very similar to how every new iteration of Batman or Spider-Man has to find an inventive and expedient way to kill off the Wayne / Uncle Ben, respectively. Speaking of Spider-Man, though, I don't know if I can fully explain this, and because we're on the same vibe here, maybe you'll indulge me in trying to work this out.
I doubt
this movie has big Raimi trilogy Spider-Man vibes.
Yeah.
And crucially, I don't mean in terms of what it looks like or its tone. Very different in both
I was about to
departments.
be on board with you, the tone, and then you're like, no, not that. And I'm like, what do I have to latch onto here?
More in terms of its themes and its characterization, as well as its ending. They're both very emo films.
Yeah, a character who is or will at some point be played by Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, exactly. And its ending, the ending of this one is the perfect, morally ambiguous cliffhanger, but works if we don't get another movie as well ending.
Yeah.
You know, it's because I was watching the first one and I was like, how is this going to end? Because I could tell from the pacing that it wasn't going anywhere ultimate by the end of this movie. And it ends with Light joining the police force. And I was like, fuck, that's a great ending. And if we didn't get any more, which they'd already planned to, but if we didn't, it's like, this works as an ending to a standalone story.
And because these films came out within a couple of months of each other, so they're probably filmed as one.
Yeah.
But one thing that blew my fucking mind that I learned this week. So the manga ran from 2004 to 2006, and this movie came out in when is it?
June 2006.
June of 2006. The anime started in October of 2006. This is not an adaptation of this predates the anime.
What? That changes everything.
I know. When the second film came out, there were two episodes of the anime out already. Like it came out the night before the third episode.
That is mind-boggling.
It's insane.
I want to talk about nothing else but that.
Yeah. Because this is like a shot-for-shot remake in parts kind of thing, which means, I guess, that the anime is a shot-for-shot remake of the manga, like, you know, just treating that as a storyboard, apart from one very crucial and very interesting scene that if you watch the anime, I'd love to discuss with you.
Okay.
But, that's insane, and it's like this is the truest version of it, I guess. Like this.
How did I not discover that in my research? This is the first one. These are not. This movie is not based on the probably more famous anime. It's not. It's objectively not.
It's based on the manga.
It's a Detective Pikachu is technically a video game movie situation.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, like that's how you do a good anime adaptation. Do it before the anime.
Do it before. Get in before it. I also felt a little reminded of Breaking Bad watching, and this may be a little more obvious. Exactly,
like this is the thing that,
There's an evil protagonist, check.
Well,
Who
and
has
also
a family.
not only like if you allow us to elaborate on each of the points,
Yep,
like the thing
please.
is that like you get Light's it's the same with Walt in Breaking Bad, that you get his motivations and you side with him. You're like, yeah, he's like, he's doing something a little bit cool. It tricks you. But then he reaches a point, and it's going to be different for everyone. He reaches a point where you go, I can't side with this guy anymore.
Absolutely.
And some people it's the very end,
yeah.
Like it's cool how it does that, and especially the anime, because the anime goes even further than these two movies. Like, and I think he hits lower lows,
right?
But yeah, it is interesting. It's that same kind of thing of like, when did you get off the hype train of the protagonist?
Yeah. So more similarities to Breaking Bad. He has he has family ties to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to elaborate on that? So Light's dad is the police chief, and Walt's brother-in-law is the DEA agent, and he is constantly having to outwit the lawman, what have you, trying to capture him. So again, with Walt, it's Hank again, but with Death Note, it's Light and Al. And most I feel like the evil protagonist thing is the most obvious thing, but I think what's more subtle is that both stories has this protagonist constantly finding himself in inescapable scenarios, which he, through his own cunning, escapes from. Yeah. And it's never cheap. It's never bad writing. It's like you rewatch Breaking Bad now and you realize the writing process of Breaking Bad is problem solving. It's writing yourself into a corner and then finding a genuine, organic way to get out of that corner. The one I always think of in Breaking Bad is when Hank is outside the RV and Walt and Jesse are inside I remember watching that for the first time being like, how the fuck?
Yeah, like this
the show's over. The show's over. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing, and it's that thing of like, this is intelligent writing of intelligent characters, where it's like it's not just like Kira does something and then Al goes, fortunately because of this device I had, or this thing that I just didn't tell anyone about. It's like you can see his thought process, and if you watch it you could be like, he probably works it out a little too early. That like it narrows down the search to it's a dozen people, one of which is Light. It narrows it down like incredibly quickly, faster than like Breaking Bad ever did, kind of thing. And but the way it did it, and it's such a similar moment. I remember having this moment in Breaking Bad, and I had it when I watched Death Note for the first time. But the moment where you go like, fuck, this show's really clever. Like this show, this is actually a really good story. In Breaking Bad, it's when in episode 4, I want to say, where he's got spoilers for Breaking Bad, for the start of Breaking Bad. He's got.
I am trying to be light on Breaking Bad spoilers.
Yeah, but he's got Crazy 8 down in the basement, and he's thinking like, oh, I might befriend this guy, but like maybe I can actually let this guy go. And then a plate is broken and he cleans up the shards, and then he has a moment where he thinks, and it's all without dialogue as well, you see him realize, and he pulls the plate out of the bin, pieces it back together, and there's one giant shard missing, and he realizes he's going to try and kill me with it. In Death Note, and I'm glad they use this in the movie as well, but it's where Ryuzaki, Al, makes a public announcement. It's like, this is we're doing this broadcast for this worldwide thing, and this is the official announcement of like, the police force have heard about Kira. We're going to catch him. I'm Al. And it's like, Lind L. Taylor. He says, look, I'm Lind L. Taylor. I'm going to be hitting the thing, and then Light, obviously threatened by this, wants to teach him a lesson, so he kills Lind L. Taylor. And then the real Al's voice comes on and says, hey, thanks for showing us that you need a face and a name. Also, we only broadcast this in the Kanto region of Japan, so we know that you're there. And it's like, and that's the kind of thing where it's like, everything in this was signposted, and like the characters were feasibly able to work out all of these things.
And so were you.
Yeah.
So were you, audience member, if you're
Yeah.
clever enough. Another similar scene to Breaking Bad, as we mentioned it before, where Light has to kill off every FBI agent tailing every possible Kira suspect at practically the same time, which is very reminiscent of a scene I won't elaborate more on because it's quite late into the series.
5A and Breaking Bad.
Yeah, in Breaking Bad. But it's done so meticulously in Death Note. It's such a complex and difficult thing to convey on film, and it's fucking captivating because he gets Ray, who's the FBI agent, specifically the FBI agent tailing Light, because all the suspects, because they know the suspects will all have links to law enforcement because of the information that Kira seems to have. He gives him the Death Note, but it's covered up, and the only blank spaces are where he writes the other FBI agents' names, which he doesn't know. He has to also look up who these people are and writes them, and then when he gives it back to him, or when he leaves it behind, the piece of paper with the holes in it is revealed that and it's like the cause of death after every thing, including Ray, who dies as well. What a hard thing to show on. I'm having trouble describing it in podcast form. Yeah. Imagine writing that in a script. It's really good.
And he also has to force a hostage situation involving both him and Ray, so that Ray will be forced to provide him identification that he's an FBI agent. And the whole thing's orchestrated by Light.
Yeah. So the owner of the Death Note copyright, so we're outside of the film now, we're in the real world. The owner of the Death Note copyright required the director to not change any of the rules of the Death Note. Very interesting, considering the Netflix remake.
Yeah, exactly.
And as the film was developed, new rules of the Death Note were added in the original manga. Kaneko described, who's the director, described adhering to this condition as the most difficult aspect of making the film. Speaking of the rules, though, there are, despite this copyright adherence, a few adaptations. It's slightly different, and some are mentioned and some are left out, depending on what version of which of the many fucking versions of Death Note you're consuming. But here are the basics. I thought it could be good to talk about these this early, just so everyone knows how it all works. So the human whose name is written in this note shall die. The note will not take effect unless the writer has the person's face in their mind when writing his or her name. Therefore, people sharing the same name will not be affected. Thank God, because if this was real, a lot of people would have tried to kill Alex Jones by now. If the cause of death is written within the next 40 seconds of writing the person's name, it will happen. And if the cause of death is not specified, the person will simply die of a heart attack. After writing the cause of death, details of the death should be written in the next 6 minutes and 40 seconds. There's also another rule that wasn't listed on the wiki, which, and maybe it's not, maybe I misheard, but it feels like so much of the plot is predicated of this, especially later on, that the death has to happen within 23 days of it being written.
Right,
so I can't write Richard Martin will get decapitated in 4 years.
Yeah.
Or I can't write AJ will die at 102 happily with the family
because
he loves.
One of the other major rules, which we'll talk about more on this in the next film, is that once a name and cause of death or whatever is written in the Death Note, that fate is sealed. It's unchangeable.
You cannot stop them from dying, and you cannot kill them another way. Yeah. It's very You're so ready for one of the rules to be so specific that you go, well, that's going to happen. But it doesn't. It never really happens. It's done very, very tastefully and very reserved. I want to talk about Ryuk, the Shinigami / Death God / Reaper. He's one of those things, and the Shinigami in general, because you see a few of them. He's one of those things that really feels like the secret sauce, because it's an addition to the story which you wouldn't know was missing if he wasn't included.
I thought about this, that if you watch the Netflix version, or if, in an ideal world they make a beautiful HBO series out of it, would you put, if you were doing a straight up serious American version of this, would you put Ryuk in it? Because it would make just as much sense, probably more sense, to not have him in it.
I agree, yeah. I don't know, I think it makes the show better, or the movie better, but he's certainly not, until the very end, does not really do anything of consequence the whole time.
Well, that's the whole point. He's
a fun character.
Watcher, He points out several times that he's not on anyone's side. He just is bored.
The most expensive to animate background character of all time, perhaps. The animation in these movies is very funny. He looks like an early PS3 design.
There is a charm to it though. It's
It doesn't have the American CGI gloss.
That's the thing. It's like a matte.
Japan go. This is good enough.
yeah.
Ship it, and it is good enough. Genuinely, it looks fake, but it looks. At the same time, it's lit within the scene, which a lot of animation comes down to is the lighting consistent with the scene it's in. It looks good, but it does look fake.
Yeah.
I think Al is such an instant classic of a character. He's a little designed to be likable with his ultra specific quirks. Like he walks funny and he loves candy
and he sits down and he always squats when he sits.
Yeah. But I think he's so well performed by Kenshi Matsuyama. It's such a good performance. It's so grounded for a character that would be so easy to overplay. And B, I would argue he's the only character in the whole thing who actually knows what he's doing and what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
To me, Al was the best character easily. I'm glad he's not the protagonist because I think it works better this way. But to me, I was like, everyone should fucking listen to Al because not only is he right about everything, he also earns that. It doesn't feel cheap that he's right about everything. Yeah. And this brings me to light. And in my very service level research of the Death Note anime community, I have seen there's a massive group of Light Yagami stans, people who are in love with him, side with him, and cool.
Misa and Mane for one.
I watched a couple TikTok compilations, and there was ones about wanting to fuck Light Yagami.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if you're into sexy anime boys, he's one of the sexiest
for sure. However, Richard, I decided to bring this up because Vincent in our Discord mentioned a very pro Light Yagami statement. And I was like...
I'm glad you're bringing this up because I wanted to hear your side of the story.
I would like to put forward the theory that not only is Light a fucking loser weenie, but I'd also argue that this is implicit in the text. I'm not saying I don't like the character. It's a Kylo Ren situation.
Yeah.
I love Kylo Ren as a character. But one of the reasons I struggled with the anime is I just thought Light was such an edgy, cringy incel. But after watching the films, I think this is entirely the point. This is a story about what happens when a pretentious, insufferable douchebag who thinks he's better than everyone else is given a weapon of mass destruction.
Well, that's the thing. It's what happens when someone with a god complex becomes a god.
That's fucking great. What a genius idea. And that's why people who are like, oh, he's so cool. He's not fucking cool.
Well, it is it's like subtext, but it's never really explicitly stated, but it's kind of important to his character that he is really smart, he's top of his class, he's really attractive, and he's really popular as well. Everyone at school knows who Light Yagami is, kind of thing.
Right.
And it's all that feeds his god complex, and he uses, especially his relationship with women, uses this to his advantage and can manipulate people quite easily, kind of thing.
Yeah, he's such a brilliant character, but I feel this brilliance has been co-opted in the same way that
Tyler Durden,
Chaotic White Boys idolize Tyler Durden, even though he's the villain.
Yeah.
And
he's the Joker.
But no, he's not cool. The Joker is cool though. Light Yagami is not cool.
He's like Rick.
How old is he supposed to be?
He 18, I think, at the start of the anime.
For sure. If I met an 18-year-old with that personality, I'd be like, whew, you got a lot of growing up to do, kid. All right. What are the biggest differences between this and the anime? You wanted to talk about this? This is the junction.
You wanted to talk about it?
I've said all I need to say about the first film. So let's. What is there anything you wanted to bring up?
So the biggest thing about that's different, and this was interesting for me because so the fiance of Ray Pemba, he's called in the anime, Ray Iwamatsu, because I guess they didn't want to put an American actor in the film, because it's in the anime they're shipped from Japan, they're shipped from America, the FBI agents.
Yeah.
So in the anime, none of the whole stuff with him forcing her to kill his girlfriend and the whole public standoff happens. None of that happens. The girlfriend doesn't even die.
What? Feels so essential to this.
I think she doesn't die. She's kind of like she's not even his girlfriend really. They kind of just he asks her on a date for the specific purpose of like having a witness for the hostage situation.
Right.
But what happens is that he's goes into he's dropping off clothes to his dad because he's been spending overnights there, and Ray's fiance is there at the same time. Just a coincidence kind of thing that she says, "Oh, I think I have information on the Kira case." And I think she mentions, or it somehow comes out that it's like she's Ray's fiance, and he thinks, fuck, like she knows the connection of the bus. They're going to know that I was on the bus, yada, yada, yada. And there's this episode, and it's my favorite episode of the show. And, therefore, one of my favorite episodes of television kind of thing, where it's just them walking together. She says, oh, my name is yada, yada, yada. He goes, oh, okay, that's interesting. Writes her name in a little page of the death note he's hiding. She doesn't die, realizes it's an alias, and then has to spend the whole episode talking to her to A, gain her trust, and B, so he can find out her real name, but also without revealing that he knows it was an alias kind of thing. And the end of the episode, when she finally, he reveals he's working on the Kira case. She reveals that she's a former FBI agent who worked under Al. They exchange actual information, and he writes her name in the death note. It says like that she commits suicide in a way in which her body will never be found. And then 38 seconds passes, and he just says, I'm Kira. And then you can see her, lose her free will, and she turns around and walks off. And it's like this beautiful shot where where she's walking turns into up a gallows. It's a great episode.
Yeah. I think I've seen that clip you just talked about then. I don't know if I've seen the whole episode, but that I think I had a weeb friend in high school who tried to make me watch this show, and I think he might have shown me bits of that episode.
Yeah, I think that's do you
know who that friend reminded me of?
Who?
Light Yagami. That's so funny. But yeah, I've just made that connection now. That's where his personality came from. Holy shit, I'm not kidding. I had a friend who loved Death Note and thought of himself in the same way Light thinks of himself.
But yeah, it is interesting to see because in the movie when she reveals oh, I know you're Kira, I'm gonna fucking prove it, and I was like, they're not gonna do the thing. They're not going to do my favorite bit. And then the whole way it comes together, I was like, damn, that's pretty fucking good too.
Yeah.
It's
like trading a really good scene for a really good way to manipulate the story.
Yeah.
To this point. So is there a equivalent in the anime for what happens at the end of this movie? Light still joins the task force?
He does still join the task force. Yeah, I mean, essentially the film, we still arrive at this point in the anime. It's just the ways of getting there are slightly different.
Yeah. All right. That's anything else you want to talk about? Death Note 2006.
No, that's 2006, I think.
All right. Moving on to 4 months later in 2006 was Death Note The Last Name, or as I like to think of it in my head, Death Note The Last Name.
Yeah.
My name is Alexander Death Note. Death Note, The Last Name. This was also directed by Shisuke Kaneko. What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
How has it not been said already?
I tweeted it a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
I tweeted out, Rotten Tomatoes, baby. It's bad to the bone.
78%.
But rotten is such a grosser word
than
bad. You want to be friends with someone who's bad. You don't want to be friends with someone who's rotten. So you said 78%?
Yeah.
It's got 80%, so 2 more percent than the first one. And Richard, what is specifically Death Note The Last Name, 2006? What is this film about? What happens?
So in this film we meet...
We open with Danny California, but we're not killing babies.
We do. We fucking do. And so we meet Misa Amane, who is also receives a death note. And
We technically met her in the last film,
yeah, it's
but
the last
it was
scene
sort of like this weird setup for what happens next.
And she's a bit more careless with her death note. She also has the Shinigami eyes, which is where you only need a face to kill someone. You don't need their real name.
You do need their real name,
but yeah, you trade half your remaining lifespan, and it allows you to see people's real name and remaining lifespan written like above their head, kind of thing, like the video for "Saving Me" by Nickelback.
Precisely. Song I'm surprised didn't show up at the end of this film.
Yeah, fucking almost. Misa goes on a killing spree and makes her presence known, like to the public, and is being a bit more careless.
The second Kira.
Yeah, and through various circumstances, she manages to find light. She's a worshipper of Kira because people killed her parents, and then Kira killed that person. And so she's a worshipper, and Kira has a lot of worshippers around the world.
Yeah.
And so, because light doesn't have, you can't see the remaining lifespan if that person is also the owner of a death note. And so she's able to know that light is Kira and confronts him and says, like, I want to be your girlfriend and let's be death note buddies, kind of thing. She's a fucking simp, of the highest caliber for light. It's like, would you believe it's toned down in this film from the anime? Like,
I have comments on that, but continue.
Yeah. So what happens in this film is that the investigation is very clearly pointing to it's Misa and Light are the two, and this happens quite quickly. It's like essentially confirmed. So what they do is they relinquish ownership of their death notes, which erases their memories of the death note. They still remember everything else that has happened in that time, but any memories of the death note are gone, and they both end up in being placed like in constantly monitored captivity.
It's worth noting that Light confronts Al before he's given up the death note and says, hey, maybe I am Kira and I don't remember it. Let's lock me up and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because Al already suspects Kira and has the whole time.
Yeah, it suspects Light.
Sorry, yes.
And so while they're in captivity and both their death notes, one of the death notes has now been given to a a newsreader, a journalist kind of thing. And she starts using it to get ahead in life. And so after a while, Light is cleared of all suspicion. So is Misa. Yeah. And they say, well, Elle still has that suspicion that it's like, I think the powers are transferable and you were Kira, but now you've forgotten somehow. But then with the police task force, with the help of Light, now track down the new Kira, who is this journalist I mentioned. And when they solve the case and they get the death note, by touching the death note, all of his memories return. And he's now cleared of all suspicion, in the middle of the task force, and has access to a death note again. Yeah.
And all the task force can now see Ryuk as well.
Yeah, because they've all touched it. And
Shinigami are now real life canon.
But there's some new rules added to the death note, like fake rules that further clear of Light of ever being a suspect, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they now have to explain more to explain what happens next. So Rem is Misa's Shinigami. So like each death note is connected to a Shinigami. When you touch it, you can see that Shinigami. And essentially, we find out that a Shinigami that protects a human, that that kills another human to extend a human's lifespan, that kills them. Light essentially forces a situation where Misa is going to be killed. That the only way to save Misa is to kill Al. And so Rem is, because Rem has fallen in love with Misa, Rem is forced to write Al's real name in the death note, killing Al and Rem. And now there's nothing in Light's way.
Yeah.
But then it's his dad's still head of the task force, so he creates a situation where he is going to have to kill his dad and get the original death note back, because he's holding onto it for safekeeping. So he writes he meets up with his dad, and then ends up he writes his dad's name on the death note, but then he doesn't die. And then Al shows up and reveals that the death note he has is a fake, but how Al survived his name being written in Reem's death note is that he wrote his own name in the death note a few days earlier, essentially sealing his fate, that like making him immortal until
for 20 days until
his
he dies.
his decided date of death. And then it's the whole task force shows up and it's like, hey, it's pretty fucking obvious you're Kira because you just admitted you are. And then Light begs Ryuk to kill all the task force so that he can keep on being Kira. And Ryuk says, yeah, I'll fucking write a name in the death note. And he writes Light's name. And then Light dies.
Light dies and Al dies 20 days later.
Yeah.
His heart stops beating. He quietly dies and his heart stopped beating. What did you think of this film?
This is great. So Death Note, the anime, has a famously weak second half.
Can we talk about that later?
Yeah.
Not right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm just suffice to say, I prefer this ending. The very end of the anime is quite good, but it's what takes to get there. The lead up to it isn't great, but this ending is like, yeah, this is the right ending for the story. The thing of writing your own name in the death note to delay your own death, that never comes up in the anime, and that is that's such a like. When I saw that, because
that's obviously that's Hank catching Walt eventually.
Yeah. Like
that's when you find out that Walt's DEA his brother-in-law's on the DEA. You go, well, at some point in the show, he's gonna find out. That's what that is.
Yeah. And like to me, that blew my mind because that was like, oh, I've like you said, every single everything we need to know so that is like a feasible option is laid out perfectly, and in the anime it doesn't ever feel like, oh, it's weird that no one did this, because it's, you know, you're told that like, yeah, the terms of their death can't be changed. You're never shown like that writing an earlier one, which, you know, it's brilliant. And the other kind of big change that is really interesting. I know you said not to talk about the change or the ending, but Rem in this is a male, whereas Rem's a female in the anime.
Oh, interesting.
Which completely changes the dynamic of I feel, you know, it changes the dynamic a bit of the relationship between Rem and Misa, because it immediately strikes you as more of like a mother-daughter kind of thing, right. Whereas it's like this, you know, I'm like it's a little bit seedier, like it's a less platonic love, it feels like, but that's not me, just that's not just lesbian erasure, it's like the way it's played is more of a like protective than like lustful.
Yeah. All right, so I also really like this one, but as was probably clear from your as eloquent as it could have been summation of the plot, this one is a bit more complicated and it's like a touch harder to follow. And I think if you're a stickler for the more grounded aspects of Death Note, this definitely is the more fantastical one of the two. I remember sitting there watching this movie and there's the whole task force are talking to a Shinigami, and I was like, this looks a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's also earned, I guess, by it's like it's the next evolution of the first film.
Yeah, exactly. And with that, exactly. The stakes are higher, so that's cool too. I really like how Al indulges Light by appearing to be his partner while also still regularly accusing him of being Kira. And it's pretty funny how Al pretty much suspects Light from the beginning, because this would be so annoying to the pretentious weenie that I believe Light is. Like, this would be infuriating.
Yeah.
He thinks he's so sly, and one detective is brought on the task force and immediately suspects.
Yeah, cool. Because it's like, why does he think I am? I'm like Kira. I am, but
yeah. The addition of Misa to the main cast is probably my favorite part of the second film. Her and Light have this a deliciously kinky dynamic. And I'm going to get a little horny on main here to describe this next opinion I have. I think if I were to remake these films, which for a long time was going to be my continue the franchise pitch, it's not anymore, so I can say that now. I'd drum up this aspect way more. It's interesting to hear that it is drummed up in the anime, because really, I would love for Death Note, the last name, to be this filthy, steamy, sexy movie, you know? This version is a little too coy. It's got flavors of it's implied that there's a power dynamic there. But it never explicitly gets sexual. But it feels like feels like a great opportunity to me to create this dom sub dynamic between the two characters.
That's kind of what you get in the anime.
Yeah. Because despite devoting herself to light and saying, "I'll do whatever you say," she also has a walking, talking safeguard in her Shinigami realm, right? So it almost feels like a vaguely sex-positive display of a faux power dynamic. You know, it's there's a kinkiness to it where it's like, I'm little daddy, little girl. Is that what it's called? Little girl.
Yeah.
But there's a safe word, and if you do screw me over, this guy will kill you. You know, like, so it's false. It's a false power dynamic, which makes it kind of safe. Like, everything's kind of above board because they have that kinkiness. The fact that that this kinkiness feels underutilized in the film is one of my small problems with it, because I was so into this relationship, but it feels like once it's established, the plot moves straight to her being caught. Right? It's I'll do anything you say. Next day she's arrested. And it feels like I want to see a montage here of the two of them killing murderers and evading suspicion before having hot, kinky but boundary respecting sex. And this montage is kind of in the Netflix version, which is the nicest thing I can say about the Netflix version. And what do you agree? Like there's this smolder to it that I kind of wish in a less family friendly, not that these movies are family friendly, but they're not very sexual. And a more sexual movie, I feel like this would be some little Japanese boy's sexual awakening. You know, or even Japanese girls too.
I think Misa and the anime definitely fulfilled that kind of thing. Like because of their relationship goes on longer in the anime as well. But it's very much like I'm obsessed with you, like, and he wants nothing to do with her. They end up together for like 5 or 6 years.
What?
And
how long is
it's unclear if they ever consummate the relationship, kind of thing. But it's very much like, she is like full on simp kind of thing. That it's like, and he essentially he thinks of Misa as being so far beneath him intellectually that he doesn't trust her to be any further than arm's reach away, and also knowing that someone else with the same powers and with the Shinigami eyes, that I can manipulate her however I want. Like it's interesting that you had this very healthy read on the relationship, because it's so unhealthy at its core. But it's a paradox of it. Yeah.
Exactly,
but obviously, like after Rem's death, the relationship continues longer in the anime than it does here, and that's when you lose that safety net.
Once you become King Incel, you become Volcel. Where you're so pretentious and so despising of women that you don't want to consummate. So this is. All of this being said, with this one small criticism being literally the only time across the two movies that I felt any remote urge to watch a longer, more spread out version of the story, I gotta say, I know a lot of our Death Note fans, like our listeners who are Death Note fans, are maybe hoping that this will inspire me to watch the anime now. I don't want to. Like, I honestly can't imagine the story being improved that much by having more stuff happen in it outside of this one example, and that's maybe just because I'm being fucking horny. It's the only thing that made me go, I would have liked to have seen more of this.
Yeah, right.
Everything else, I can't imagine this being better spread out across multiple episodes. It's so well paced. It's so tight. And
so now you say it's well paced.
Well, I said the start was poorly paced, but the rest wasn't. What do you say to that? I genuinely probably won't watch the anime despite really enjoying a lot of these movies.
And like it's part of this the anime, like it was my first exposure to it, and like I'm so attached to that, like the cast and the overacting and like the voice of light kind of thing. And there is the kind of what you were saying about like we're kind of friends, but I also like I am going to constantly accuse you of being Kira. That's quite a fun dragged out, but there's a whole
it's beautiful.
There's a
It's
whole period of
beautiful.
time where Light and Al are handcuffed together, and like they go on dates.
So it's more fun bottle episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but and so like Misa and like go on dates, and Al's sitting there, kind of thing. And there's one bit where they all hold hands and dance around in a circle, which is like. It's justified in the show, but yeah.
I watched a brief TikTok compilation of Death Note themed TikToks, and there was one clip I thought was pretty funny where Misa goes, "I can't imagine a world without light," and there's a pause, and then Al goes, "Yes, that would be very dark," and then then Light goes, "Would you shut up a second?" I was like, that's pretty funny. Yeah, okay. That whets my appetite a little.
It's one of those things that like maybe like it's character stuff that's folded in, you know,
which is crazy because that dynamic of Al and Light, it's like in a movie series or an intellectual property where the like image they use to sell the series is this demonic 8-foot tall winged beast. The most interesting thing about it is the quasi hatred friendship between two human characters.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
And there's because there is a whole bit where it's like where Al says essentially like, "Oh, it's annoying that you're Kira because you're probably the closest thing I've ever had to a friend." That's
beautiful. That's so good.
And I'm going to tell you about the scene from the anime. It's only in the anime. It's not in this or in the manga or anything.
It is my next point after this other point, which is Rem looks weirdly way worse than Ryuk.
Yeah.
Rem is more late PS2 than early PS3.
Rem's also just a worse character design, I think.
But
so there's a bit in the anime. This is the episode that Al dies. And we'll kind of talk about how this ending is different. But so the anime has essentially the bit where Al falls over in his chair and dies, or quote unquote dies in the movie. Nothing after that happens in the anime. That's the death of Al.
Blows my mind. How do you write the story and not see how important Al is?
Yeah. Even more so with what happens after that. But the episode where it's like Al essentially, he feels it in the air. There's something. He knows this is probably his last day on Earth, essentially, and he goes up to the roof, and it's pouring rain, and he's standing there, essentially like, this is probably the last time I'm ever going to feel rain, and Light comes up and is essentially like, "What are you doing?" And it's one of those things where it's like they're talking like friends, but that it's like there's this whole other dynamic going on, and there's a bit where Al's like says something about like, "Can you hear that?" And it's like I can the bells are ringing or something like that. And it's like this beautiful scene of the two of them on the roof, and then they go inside and they take off their their wet clothes essentially and get changed. But there's a bit where Light is sitting there, they're sitting on these steps, and he's putting on dry socks, and Al just stops and like massages his bare feet, and it's this like,
that's cool.
It's this thing of like, you talk to people about Death Note and they go, "Oh, the feet scene," it's like one of those like famously divisive and bizarre things, and it was created specifically. It's not in the manga.
Well, do you not to get
it's a biblical
not
reference.
To return not to return to my growing up Christian roots, but Jesus would clean the feet of, as an act of service. It was like a way to show that like even the Son of God is not better than other humans, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe.
Ain't too proud to be.
I'm not Christian anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like when you the Bible is like a death note, and as soon as you give up Christianity, you lose all this information.
But yeah, it's the super interesting scene, and the back to back of those two, the one on the roof and then that one. It's like watching it, because the first time I watched it, obviously very stands out as like a very strange scene. But then watching it this time, I was like, "Fuck, this is the most beautiful scene in the film." Like, in the show,
it sounds gorgeous.
yeah, it's such an interesting scene.
That's the kind of scene that I would love to write. Like if I was involved in the show, and then someone's like, "Can you write a couple of scenes for this?" I'd be like, "Okay, bear with me." He massages his feet. Outside of foot massages, what else? What does that? So it just ends with Al dying. I've talked to a few people over the past fortnight who have said I watched it up until Al died.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no shit. Richard, this sounds awful that it keeps going after. Well, not even that. It keeps going. I'd hate it if in these movies if Light won. I just really dislike, I like as a character, but dislike Light as a person. Yeah. And I feel like it's a less smart ending for Light to win.
Yeah, he ultimately doesn't win.
Right.
At the very end of the series. Yeah.
That's
cool. But he has his victory over Al. And so Al dies looking into Light's eyes. It's just the two of them. And he doesn't say it, but it's very clear that with his eyes, Light admits to being Kira in Al's final moments, kind of thing. And then the next episode is a clip show, and then after that,
I've never heard of a drama having a clip show before.
Well, it's like a recap because they're not technically seasons, but they were released a while apart, right. I think. Then we're introduced to two new people who it's essentially like, Al secretly trained two people, and they're just Al.
Bad.
And
bad,
so,
bad.
There is a time jump, which is 4 to 6 years, something like that. And we kind of rejoin the timeline when the American government has said, we're not going to try and catch Kira anymore. We're not going to argue with them anymore, which is a really interesting thing. And like that's something that I wish had been explored more in it. The idea that like the American government being like, he's too powerful, we're bowing to him. Yeah, sweet. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like the two kids, because they're just kids, all of them are just kids. But like the main one who's like actually like a little boy who's named Nia, which is in the next film we're going to discuss. Yeah. But yeah, and essentially it's like it just picks up where Al left off. And so Light becomes the new Al, or they try and hide the fact that Al is dead, and they just say, "Oh, Light, you can be Al from now on." And yeah, there's more people get the death note as well, and things like that. Also, the whole midsection of the journalist getting the death note is a lot better in the movie. Because in the anime, it's like a company that had their board of directors like share the death note, or like one of them has it, but they don't know which one. But every day they're like, "Oh, who should we kill next?" kind of thing, not knowing who in the room is actually doing it. Right. And it's a very like because at that point in the show, it's not clear where this is going. Is it like have they just, because it goes for like 6 to 8 episodes, something like that, and it's like, this is actually like, what are you doing? Why has Light not been in it, kind of thing?
Do you know, this sounds like the Japanese Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
That's what this very similar like data readout in terms of how good each section of the show is. Like Twin Peaks was like a real good first season, real good first half of second season. Yeah. Then like the worst thing you've ever seen for the rest of the second season until the last episode, which is one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen. Nice. All right. So, I will say, I can understand seeing an ending that sounds pretty trash and then seeing this one and thinking it's way better. I wasn't completely in love with this ending. I was quite conflicted on it and still kind of like figuring out my feelings towards it. I definitely think it's good that the best part is that both die and that Al does it in such a sacrificial way that they both got each other, essentially, right?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And that's a better ending than what we got. Yeah. And that's the thing where I was like, fuck, this is like such an improvement.
What I wasn't too sure about is I don't know why Ryuk kills Light. I don't know why he decides.
He does in the anime as well.
Is there a reason?
Right at the start of when he first gets to the death note, he says like, "I'm going to be the one that writes your name." that writes your name on the
Right.
death note, and he's fulfilling his promise. And essentially, it's in the movie, it's like because it's when Light begs him to kill everyone, and he's like, "Fuck you, dude! I'm not on your side."
Right.
And it's like to him, it's like, yeah, okay, this was fun for a little bit. He's playing a game with the human world, and he's like, "Oh, this is fun for a bit, but you're being a dick, so fuck you." Whereas in the anime, it's like he's been shot up by the police, so he's on death's door anyway, Light, and then Ryuk's kind of like, just give it up, dude, and writes his name. It's more
I like that better. Just that little clip. I think that exchange sounds better, where it's Ryuk being like, just give it up, whereas in the movie it just seems like a random roll of the dice.
Yeah, he also, like, in the show, he like says, "I told you I would write your name," kind of thing, and he's like, "And dude, it's your fucking time." Like,
yeah. Do you know what's great is like intimate moments between mortal enemies. It's a thing we've seen in a lot of sort of in Yu-Gi-Oh as well. Like it's just it gets me.
Yeah, like when Kaiba potentially kills himself to see the Pharaoh again.
Yeah, and you see it in things like Lost and a lot of, and Breaking Bad as well, and like a lot of these things. I really dig it. It's such a complex human emotion that I've never experienced because I've never had a mortal enemy, but it's really profound.
Oh, I've never had intimate moments with mine. With any of them.
Anyway,
you have no mortal enemies, and I have several.
If anyone's wondering, the song in the credits for this movie is "Hey-O" by
Snow Hey-O.
Snow Hey-O by Red Hot Chili Peppers. So you've just watched this.
I loved that. That was so funny, man.
Complex tale of two cities, kind of Greek tragedy, and then it ends in "Hey-O."
So when I said home, come get a little man.
All right, so the next film we watched was a spin-off film. It's the Puss in Boots to the first two movies, Shrek.
Yeah, I was thinking this that like this is a legit 100% spin-off. This is dictionary definition spin-off.
Yep.
You look up spin-off in the dictionary and it says
Puss in Boots, Al changed the world, get him to the Greek.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was like, how often do we get like legit spin-offs on this podcast? Like get him to the Greek, Puss in Boots, Hobbs and Shaw, the American Pie series, I guess, but even those are like, this feels like a very pure spin-off.
Sure. Yeah.
That it's a side adventure from a beloved character.
Yeah. So this is called Al Changed the World. The Al in world is capitalized because that's cool. This came out in 2008, was directed by Hideo Nakata. I'm sorry, I feel so bad whenever I pronounce anything that isn't European on this show.
Hideo Nakata. And did you look up his filmography?
No, tell me.
He did The Ring films.
Oh, shit.
The original Japanese Rings.
Ringu, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. But he also directed The Ring 2, the American one. Do you know
wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so he did Ring 2, and The Ring 2.
Right. Okay, that's strange. That's so strange. What do you think Al Changed the World has on Rotten Tomatoes?
It'd be lower, or like significantly lower, I'd imagine. Maybe like 40-ish.
Richard, what if I were to tell you that Al Changed the World doesn't have a Rotten Tomatoes score?
I wouldn't believe you.
It has a 64% audience score, but I haven't been talking about the audience score. Doesn't have a critic score. This has got to be the best movie we've ever watched on this podcast that doesn't have a critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. Usually this title is reserved for Beethoven sequels. This is a strange movie to not have a single critic review. At least not one recorded.
No, I think it's like 5 is the threshold or something.
Right. There you go. What is this movie about?
So this is a really interesting thing, and this was like when I was like, this is a fucking good idea. Is so that this is set in the 20 days between when our Light dies and Al's his predetermined date of death. So it's essentially the 20 days where Al was unkillable.
Yeah.
And also knowing he's at the end of his life. And so it's about a virus. It's about a deadly virus. Yeah, it's 100 times more infectious than Ebola. And it destroys this village in Thailand with a sole survivor who's this kid who Al takes under his wing. Yeah, it's kind of just like a reasonably run-of-the-mill
Yeah,
detective story.
This one isn't
Like,
one we need to
it's
tell every single plot point in, unlike the
yeah,
last two.
exactly.
He stops the pandemic at the end.
Yeah, and then he leaves the little boy at like an orphanage kind of thing, where he grew up, and
Tells him his name is Nia.
yeah, he names the kid Nia, which is his protege in the anime.
Yeah. So what did you think? You hadn't seen any of these. So yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, I didn't see it. Well, it's in the Netflix one,
Yeah.
but yeah, this yeah, I liked it enough. You know, it was good. It was pretty good, and it was cool seeing Al again. And I was still this one is also dubbed, and so I was able to watch it. You know, and see the performance of Al.
I watched these subbed, by the way, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah, like a weeb.
I thought this was by and large pretty good, but nowhere near as sharp as the previous two. There was some stuff I quite liked a lot and some stuff I really didn't like, which is the first time there's been something I really didn't like in the series.
Yeah.
So I liked that we got to deconstruct the character of Elmore. There's a really wonderful scene where the kids he's hanging out with, that he's taking a little girl and a little boy under his wing. They get him to stand up straight and stop eating candy, and it's a real moment of calm. And I was ready to give this movie 3 stars, and then that scene happened, and I was like, that's probably 3.5 stars. Like, because it's just this really beautiful human moment.
Yeah, and quite often with these kind of movies, like you lose a lot of the charm of the side character by making them
revealing the magic of them as well, like Solo.
Yeah, and this one. Yeah, didn't, you know, it's and also like with a character like Al who's based around having so many quirks, you also expect them to kind of you know get a bit grating by the end of a solo feature, and they didn't.
And they even go as far as to do the sin of the spin-off, the sin-off, and explain his quirks in this film. They explain why he eats so much candy, and I didn't mind that either, strangely enough. Maybe it was just because it was in another language. I don't know why I didn't mind it, but
it's also it's also a more like interestingly made film, I think, as well. Just in terms of the filmmaking, the first two were quite, like you said, they're low budget and kind of flat in a lot of ways, whereas this one it felt just more like it was there was a filmmaker behind the lens, essentially. You know.
Okay, so I also like that he smiles at the end as he's walking off into the sunset. You see him smile. What I really didn't like, though, and this is going to be controversial because you just said you liked this, I didn't like at all that the film is set in the 20 days before Al's death. I understand why that's a cool setup. Yeah. Why that's a cool setup for any movie, right? And I understand why it's alluring. It adds a ticking clock. I think that's all great. But it completely undermines the ending of The Last Name. Yeah. To me.
I get what you mean.
Because now the last thing Al ever did wasn't give up his own life in order to best Kira in a cosmic battle between good and evil, life and death. Yeah. Instead, the last thing he did was prevent a global pandemic, which didn't work, by the way, Al. It works in the movie. I just think that for a story that is so good and genuine at being poetic, this is poetry. Death Note is poetry. You've got me saying it, Richard. Death Note is poetry.
Yes, we got him, boys.
This spin-off, the premise of it completely saps the poetry from those original films.
Yeah, and I get that. And I think I'm kind of like I 100% agree with what you're saying, and I was talking more from like that's such a cool idea to set it then.
It's a cool idea for a movie. To do it for this movie is, I'm like,
but also because the character of Al is like, he's a world famous detective, and he's brought in, he's known by reputation only, that he's solved all these high profile cases. So it's not like you can't just do one of his earlier cases.
Which is the next thing I was going to say, is this could just be a prequel. You could do a whole series. Like, Al is clearly the character that everyone's clamoring for more of, right? You do a prequel series that's a case of the week story. Could even be monster of the week, because he's not surprised when he sees a Shinigami, which suggests he's fucked with the supernatural before, you know? Like, you could do an X-Files but with light.
There's a very It's a very funny moment. It's the moment where you're finally like, oh, this is what it was all leading to. When so Al is the first one to get the Death Note after it's been out of Light's possession for weeks. And he's like, oh shit, that's a Shinigami, and he hands it to Al to Light. So who who then has all of his memories flood back to him in an instant, and it's like this massive it's it's animated very dramatically of all this shit like shooting into his head, and he screams and he's sitting next to Al, and Al's just like, oh, I guess it would be pretty scary seeing a Shinigami. Like he just thinks that he just got this massive right.
That's great. I had to pause this movie midway through because I was falling asleep, and I had a cursed post 5 p.m. nap at about 7:45 in the evening.
That'll do it.
That's a note. That's a note I've written down. I woke up with a start at about 8 p.m. It was a 15-minute nap. Woke up because I vomited in my mouth a little bit. I just had a milkshake for dinner, which in itself is a whole thing, and then woke up going,
let's not go into it now.
Rich, I don't have much else to say about Light Change the World. Is there anything else?
Yeah, because it's an original story. It's I can't talk about it from that perspective. But yeah, I do like the idea, like the we talked about the sitting at that 20 days thing. I do like the idea that putting Al on a case where it's important that he can't die, like he's immune to the virus, essentially.
Right.
And so it's like, yeah, they do at least do that. But yeah, it does ruin the poetry because we see his death again in the film. Or do we?
No, you don't. You see him walk off.
No, you don't. There's a post-credit scene of him, and then it fades to like a Al Laureate, rest in peace. Because I think Al is actually just his real name. You never see it like proper, like you never see it in English.
But if Al was his real name, did just no one think to write Al on the Death Note?
Well, no one knew his last name.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now we're going to talk about Death Note, Light Up the New World, which came out in 2016. Oh, if I'm doing the same thing I did with Al Change the World, it's Death Note, Light Up the New World. God, fuck, that peaked my audio.
Yeah, I heard.
That's going to fuck the when I try to max out all peaks to 0. Fun podcast. Other podcast editors, you know what I'm talking about. This was directed by Shinsuke Sato, so it came out quite a long time later, 8 years after Al Changed the World and 10 years after the last name. Directed by Shinsuke Sato. What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I know this one's quite low. It's like 20 or 40?
40, yeah. 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. And what is it about?
So it's set 10 years later. It's a distant sequel kind of thing. And it's there's now cyber terrorism, and there's a new Ryazaki, and
or new Al for those who don't know what that means.
So yeah, there's evidence that points to the fact that there's new Death Notes, and then they find out there are 6 Death Notes in the human world, and there can only ever be 6. If the 7th one would have dropped, it would not take it. It wouldn't work, essentially.
Yeah.
And then we kind of have this, like you said it to me the other day, that it's like it's essentially it's collecting the Infinity Stones. That they've got to collect all 6 notebooks, and essentially everyone wants it because it's like, well, obviously the Death Note is the most powerful weapon in history, and if you are able to own and hold on to all 6, no one will ever have one to use against you, kind of thing.
Right. I actually the whole time I was like, what happens when you get all 6? But that makes sense, is that it means...
Because even if someone finds another Death Note, it won't work because you already have 6. And so, obviously the police are like, well, if we have all 6, then nothing can happen. And then there's a couple of bad guys that are trying to get them. Then it's... what happens then?
It's such hard work to explain what happens.
Yeah.
Well, okay. There's a main character I didn't realize was the main character till about 3/4 of the way through the film,
Mm.
and he ends up there's like a second. They think that Light's back, even though he died, and it ends with uh, how does it end? Oh, it ends with I don't know, the bad guy gets killed, the good guys
Yeah.
get killed. It's
Yeah, so essentially it's like
I actually found this
the
very hard to follow towards the end, so I'm probably not the best person to describe
well,
what
yes.
happens.
So our main character has had his memory wiped, and what is actually Kira,
Yeah,
or like
it does the thing that halfway through the first film I was like, this would be an interesting way to tell the story, which is you follow the perspective of someone who at the end the twist reveal is they are Kira and they had their memory wiped.
mm,
Like, because
yeah,
watching the second film I was like, imagine if Death Note was about this and the twist of the movie, the twist of the story is
mm,
finding out the main
yeah,
character
and
is
that's what this
Kira.
film does.
Yeah.
The leader of the task force
You're
is
creaking a
revealed to be
lot in your
Kira.
fucking chair. That's not Richard farting, everybody. That's his chair creaks.
I have farted a few times as well.
His chair, which I've begged him for years to change out because I always hear it creaking.
I did for a while as well,
Wow.
but now it's in the other room. I'm changing podcasting room. Probably the next time we record, I'll be in a
You're
different
changing
room in the house.
podcast rooms.
Mm,
Why's that?
yeah, that just I'm currently in like our second living room, and it doesn't have there's no door between the two, and
Yeah.
we now have our spare room free again. So we've got like a master bedroom and a smaller bedroom. And we're like, well, how much time do you actually spend in your bedroom? You don't need that much space.
Hmm.
So we're moving our bedroom to be in the spare bedroom, and then going to set up the main bedroom as like a half spare bedroom, half office space. So, I
Nice.
mean, we'll probably have the same echoey issues we had when I first moved into this house, but we are going to, there'll be a lot more stuff in the room to dampen the sound. There'll be rugs. I'll probably take the blanket I have behind me to dampen the sound. I'll probably take that with me. Yeah,
Hey,
and want to also set up like a retro gaming kind of thing. Put my 360. I want to get a Nintendo 64, but they're hard to come by. I know
I've
you
got
have one
one.
you don't use.
I never use it, Richard, and you can't have it.
I messaged you the other day to ask if I could
And
buy
I
it, and you
didn't
ignored
reply.
the message. I put the PS1 in there and shit as well. And,
Nice. And hey, I've recently got an Ethernet cable, so we haven't had any internet trouble this time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and that's what happens at the end of Light Up the New World.
Well, yeah. So the thing is that it ends up with
I don't want to dwell on it because it's just a bunch of complex back and forths. That
I just want to say how the film actually ends,
Yeah,
because I know
go
there's
for
a
it.
thing at the end of the film that we both want to talk about.
Go for it.
Al, huh?
I said go for it. Just
Oh,
go.
sorry.
What was that? No.
The new Owl's name has been written in the Death Note, and the new Kira has been arrested, and it's a very like, we're not so different, you and I kind of scene, where it's like they still respect each other, they still respect each other's like deductive abilities, and Ryuzaki / L comes into his cell and says like, we should trade places, like you go keep being L. You're probably the best person in the world. You're probably the most qualified person to keep, these Death Notes safe, essentially. And I'll stay here and just die in your place. No one knows who we are. No one knows what we look like, and they agree to it. And also the other thing that kind of happens at the end, which is interesting, is that they say like, oh, we've got all 6 Death Notes now, like, and we're never going to use them again. And the Shinigami's like, humans are always going to use Death Notes. Humans are greedy, disgusting creatures, and no matter what happens, no matter what you do, they're going to find out a way to use them. And the convoy truck that was transporting them destroys 4 of them. And so now it's like, now 4 Death Notes are just going to pop up somewhere in the world, and now we've got the new Owl to look for them.
Yeah, and Al, Ryuzaki and new Al share each other's names. It's like, he says, my real name is this, because the police don't tell each other their names, because we live in a post-Death Note world,
Yeah.
and what does Ryazaki says, like, our real names are both so...
He says our names are both so ordinary.
Which I really liked that line. I don't know why.
It's like the most beautiful line in the franchise. It's
Yeah.
poetry. Death
Yeah.
Note is poetry. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's that line. If this was an Oscar-winning film, that would be the Oscar scene.
The Oscar scene they wouldn't show.
Yeah, suck on that, Steven Soderbergh.
I think it's because so much of Death Note, and specifically this film, is about the importance of one's name in a. And in fact, a lot of anime is about that.
Like your name,
like Spirited Away is all, and your name is all about. Like that's two examples we came up with independently, accidentally. Where like your name
that
is
thing of like I thought surely this is the obvious one he's talking about.
Yeah.
And you were thinking of a different one,
the one without your name in the title. Like it's seems to be such a like signifier for identity, and in Light Up the New World there is a there's a malaise that washes over the police force because they can't tell anyone their real name. There's a blues to it. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
A blues? Yeah. Like I got the blank blues. I've got the anonymous blues. Like I can't tell anyone my name. It's I get it. Yeah. They're like
yes, it's that thing that the whole Death Note saga is about the importance of a name, and it's like the greatest killer the world has ever known's weapon is your name, and the thing you have to protect is your name, and it's like, and essentially it's just it's them realizing or him realizing at the end, like they're just words.
Yeah,
man. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeous line.
It's good. However, after talking about this, I am live on the pod going to take this film half a star down on Letterboxd, I think. I've now got it at 3.5 because I still quite liked it. You explaining it then, I was like, fuck, this is a complicated plot to try and understand. And not in a good way. Not in the way that the first two are good. I was going to say I think it's relatively even with the first two, but I think, because I was like, I disagree with critics. I still do. I think it's better than Al Change the World.
Yeah.
But I don't think... It's just a little too convoluted, I think.
Well, yeah, I think as well. I went into it having seen it had 40% on Rotten Tomatoes and thinking,
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Because I was so shocked at how good the first two were, and also Al Changed the World, and then I was like, oh, okay, so this is the point of diminishing returns, and then I was like, this is fucking just again, it looks a lot better, and like just being a 2016 film.
Ryuk looks great in it.
Oh my god, it looks incredible.
It's the same matte CGI, like very Japanese, like not very Japanese, but very non-American. But it's 10 years later. Do you know what it is? It reminds me of the CGI in Neil Blomkamp's movies, in like District 9 or Chappie. Like
I was going to say,
yep.
It reminds me of the CGI in another 2016 Japanese film which revitalized a franchise, Shin Godzilla.
Ah, yes. No, and I would also categorize that with District 9. It's this weird, it looks baked into the shot, whereas like MCU CGI looks a little more put on top of the shot. Yeah.
It is cool because Shin Godzilla has really interesting, and also if you're the Shin Ultraman trailer, it's that same kind of thing where it's like, it's foreign essentially. It's foreign to us.
There's absolutely there is absolutely a concrete concept we're discussing here, but neither you or I know what we're talking about.
No, enough
so
about
it
VFX.
So it sounds like we're not saying anything. There's a specific look to the movies we just mentioned in the VFX that. If you do VFX, let me know what that is. I'm very interested because I think it looks way better than blockbuster CGI.
Well, it's that kind of like, because it's not trying to be perfect, it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. I do wonder if maybe talking about this movie and liking it less as we discussed it, I think what I really liked was its premise. It scratched an itch of revisiting this universe in the future where Death Note lore is commonplace. Everyone knows what a Death Note is now. Everyone knows what Kira is. Everyone knows what Shinigami are. Like, this as I said before, it's a post Death Note world, and it's in chaos because of that, and it felt like something weird pitch in Continue the Franchise.
It's an incredible Continue the Franchise.
It is a textbook Continue the Franchise.
Yeah.
We have
I think it's smarter than anything we put the effort to pitch in.
Speaking
as someone who is still trying to think of one.
I think like your Meet the Parents Continue the Franchise has echoes of this. Like
but okay, that's the gold standard for Continue the Franchise.
I don't know. It's just it's a very interesting place to take the series. What this movie is it's what the next Jurassic World movie is going to be, where dinosaurs are out and it's now a post-apocalypse where dinosaurs roam free. The movie they wanted to make in 2015 but made Jurassic World 1 instead. Like
interesting thing about Jurassic World Dominion, because obviously people are like, oh, it's just going to be dinosaurs fucking roaming everywhere. And it's like, well, it doesn't make sense. There weren't that many dinosaurs released, but I saw a thing from Colin Trevorrow who's like, yeah, they're going to be like bears are now. They're not like they're not running rampant across the world, but there's something you have to be aware of and prepared to meet if you're out in their territory.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay,
that's almost cooler in a way.
Yeah. Where it's like, they're not everywhere, but they're a very real threat.
Some stuff I didn't like I really didn't like in this movie is that it's kind of vague and I didn't really understand it. But they said that Light had a secret son, like he had a kid, and I have no idea when that would have happened. And it's also seemingly amounts to nothing. Like you never see the son, he doesn't turn up. How did he have a son?
It's not a son; it's like a successor.
They say, in my subtitles, they said son, and I thought maybe they meant successor, but then they say if he had one, he'd be 9 by now.
Right.
And it's like, there's this whole subplot about this that amounts to nothing except for the main character's, like, backstory, and I just didn't think it made a lot of sense. What else? I don't have anything else written down, but I feel
and also Misa comes back in this film. And I actually quite liked the end of her storyline, that because she it's very heavily implied she commits suicide at the end of the anime. It's not explicitly shown, but you're showing her depressed standing at the top of a building and then it cuts away kind of thing. And in this film, because it's like, oh my god, is Light back? Like there's deep fakes essentially released of Light, and they get her back in on the case because they're like, she has intimate knowledge of the Death Note, and she might be willing to help us if she thinks that Light's back. And after going through a little adventure, we see that she's written her own name in the Death Note, saying like Misa Amane dies in Light Yagami's arms, and she dies alone because the instructions written in the Death Note have to be physically possible, otherwise they'll just die of a heart attack. And I thought that was kind of a beautiful, like it was a last hope from her. They also bring back Matsuda, who's like kind of the dumb childish one of the original Kira task force, and he's in here, and fuck, he's such good casting, and in this he's and he ends up dying in this as well. So it's like tying off their loose ends that they left alive from the original film. Which is interesting, It's a very like, I'm sure this all happened in Japan, but I can very clearly picture all the articles that would have come out, all the interviews that the cast would have done in the pre-release for this film kind of thing, because we see versions of them, like the fact that you have new footage of Light is like the actor would have let slip in an interview, like, they're making a new Death Note, I'm going to be in it, and people being like, this is going to ruin the film. And then, and like, how are they going to bring him back? And it's like, oh, that's kind of a clever way to do it, to be like, oh, we got him back, but we're not breaking the rules or anything like that. And then bringing back like the surviving members and then killing them off.
We also see a few more Shinigami in this film. There's Ryuzaki has one named Arma, who's a female Shinigami, who kills herself to save Ryuzaki in one of the most, like, I thought it was pretty lame, because the person she kills, someone's trying to kill Ryuzaki, she kills that person and then dies because she saved him, and that's the rule. But the person she kills is like a good kid, like this lady who worked on the task force, who's like quite a tragic character.
She's
who,
the last member of the task force.
yeah, who could have probably been talked out of killing him. Like it's just, it didn't seem like this was the character that the Shinigami murders to sacrifice her own life in the end.
Yeah, sure.
And then Ryuzaki died anyway, so whatever.
Yeah, it's a cool character design though. It was an original design made for the film by the original. Did you find out much about the original creator of the manga?
I've got a couple of quotes of them from them later on.
Oh yeah. Did you find one thing that's very interesting about because I can't imagine you found out much information about them because no one knows who it is. It's I
don't know what I found then.
Tsugumi Oba is the pen name, but no one knows age, gender, anything about.
Well, how appropriate is that? That a movie
exactly,
where you
right?
can't give your name, or a series where you can't give your name to anyone lest you be killed, has given a pen name out.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Richard. After this film ends with a song called "Dear Diary," which is just as silly as Red Hot Chili Peppers, if not sillier. Although no, it feels more appropriate for an anime adaptation.
Yeah.
A year later, we got Death Note in 2017. This is the American Netflix remake, something that was in development for like 10 years. This was directed by Adam Wingard, who you may know from the recent effort of Godzilla vs. Kong. And
which makes this our second franchise where at least half the directors have directed Godzilla.
And what does this movie...
After Godzilla.
Thank you. I was like, what did he mean? Okay. What do you think this highly anticipated movie, has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Is it in the teens?
It's actually pretty high. I'm sorry to tell you.
How much is it?
It's 38%, so 2% worse. Only 2% worse than Light Up the New World, despite being 100% worse than Light Up the New World. What is this movie about? It's in broad strokes the premise again from the first film.
Very broad strokes.
Well, it diverges dramatically, and we get left with a movie that feels like someone watched Death Note once 10 years ago and is like relaying it to their friend. Like the way that Alex Garland wrote Annihilation is how Adam Wingard directed Death Note 2017.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got now Light Turner, who finds the Death Note. And then Ryuk visits him, and then he decides to.
Do you know what? Anything that's relevant about what's different about this, we'll explain in what we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
So but, I could probably just go ahead. Maybe list the cast for us. I haven't.
What I was going to say. But then with the Death Note, he immediately reveals to a girl who pays attention to him that he's Kira and his powers, and then they team up, and you have this sexy little montage of them killing people. And then
it's not sexy enough. I'll say it.
There are a couple of really sexy moments in this film that I want to talk about. Okay. Yeah, and then also Al, played by Lakeith Stanfield, one of my favorite young actors, playing a fantastic character from one of my favorite shows, and. What else fucking happens? And then there's this whole convoluted ending.
And Willem Dafoe voices Ryuk.
And it's incredible casting.
All right, so here's what I've written. God, it's so bad. This movie fucking sucks. Jesus Christ.
Let's talk about our experience with this movie, because we were living together when this came out.
Please.
And I'd been anticipating this movie for a long time. It was for a long time. I
was respecting this, right? We were sort of watching it together, and I was very respectfully I had no interest in making fun of this movie, especially because you were looking so forward to it.
And Adam Wingard, hot off The Guest, it's a good director. Lakeith Stanfield, Willem Dafoe as Ryuk, one of the greatest casting decisions of all time. But for a long time, this was in development with Gus Van Sant was directing it, with Zac Efron in the lead role, which we'll talk about. But then the film comes out, and it's like, So yeah, we were watching it together, and maybe like 45 minutes into it, you were just like, I'm gonna go, man. Like,
And I'm watching it this time. It was nowhere near that, man. Because the thing is that what I didn't like about it was the breakneck pace at which it delivered the story. I looked at the time. It was 6 minutes in is when Light gets the Death Note and sees Ryuk, which I'm sure in the anime that's about how long it takes as well. But this is a movie, so we're dealing with different like expectations of time, and you just get this scene, and it's 6 minutes. And it's like, fuck, this is early in a film that's frankly probably a little too short for what it's trying to do anyway. Like this is the kind of stuff you put in 20 minutes into a movie, not 6 minutes into a movie. And I remember that being what made me be like, all right, I'm not going to watch this. And for all these years, Richard, I assumed the reason it was considered bad is because it tried to cram the whole series into 90 minutes. That's not what happens. It deviates so dramatically. Yeah. So this isn't the reason.
Yeah, and so the thing is that, is that there's such a quantifiable, exact pinpoint moment in the film where before that you're like, okay, they've maybe got a couple of things wrong, but this could be good.
It's maybe going a bit too fast, but there's probably good stuff.
Yeah, like, you know, get to the good stuff, get to the real cat and mouse kind of stuff. And that's when Ryuk first appears and Light does this hilarious girlish scream. And it's like, it's so like, oh, okay, you've got the character wrong then. Because
it's goofy. It's a goofy.
Not even just being like,
it's a pratfall.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pratfall, and it's like, and we're not even being like, oh, Light's too girly and shit. Like it's the fact that when Light in the anime and I think in the movie first sees Ryuk, he's like
Duh!
what in the anime he's
scream?
like the DreamWorks face.
DreamWorks face. He does an anime scream in a DreamWorks face.
But yeah, he's just like, I was wondering, I had a suspicion you might show up, kind of thing, or like, and it's very like, yeah, he's intelligent, he's always cool, calm, collected, right until the very last moment of the series, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And this, he just freaks the fuck out, like so much, and then the first person he kills, he does it by decapitation, and it's very like Final Destination-y. It's like some marbles fall and it trips over a person. They go into in front of a car and another car.
Something
with a
you
ladder
never
on top.
see again happen in the movie.
Yeah,
they're like, this is how death works in this movie. You're like, all right, like Final Destination. It goes, huh? No, just this one death.
Yeah, and then from that point on, it just betrays everything you love about the series. One thing that I think I didn't. If you'd asked me what do I hate about Death Note a couple of weeks ago, or the 2017 one, I wouldn't have thought of this. But the fact that he never kills anyone with a heart attack, and because it's like, to me that's Kira. That's the whole point of this character. And
this franchise made me think more about heart attacks than I ever have in my life.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but the fact that because and that's what makes him so terrifying is that it's these heart attacks, because it's like, how's he doing? Make people have heart attacks. Yeah, like, and whereas like, oh, okay, he's just pulling some strings to make people die in hilarious ways, kind of thing.
And also when he decapitates this kid, it happens moments after him doing the pratfall and the girly scream. It's one of those things which pisses me off, because it's like, you are a guy, you live in middle America. You see the first confirmation of the supernatural you've ever seen. A life-changing event, Richard. A life-defining moment. He screams, weirdly, and then he gets over it.
Yeah.
In the same scene, like in real time, we see him go from, I am experiencing the Shinigami, I am experiencing the supernatural, to, wait, so you're telling me I just write a name in this thing and it kills I hate it. But also, and on the same wavelength as the no one dies of a heart attack, the rules of the Death Note have been changed in this, and we'll get more into them later, but so is Light's characterization. And both of these changes, the rules and who Light is as a character, are both seemingly changed to be more sympathetic, to create a less dark story, which is like, why are you making Death Note if you don't want it to be dark as fuck? right?
But then at the same time, they also add all this gore and have the characters say fuck a lot. And it's like, it's one of those scripts that like, it's gratuitous swearing. Like it's like, it feels like you wrote a PG-13
You
script.
didn't swear for the first 22 years of your life, and then you suddenly say the F word for the first time, and you're like, I can fucking swear all the time. My pastor can't tell me off.
It's very like edgy, but yeah. What do you mean about the rules make it more sympathetic?
So the worst rule that they add is that there is some wiggle room now to reverse a death. Like it's vague and basic, but it's, to me, that's so antithetical. To me, it's like, no, the regret is part of it. The not being able to change anything, that's the fucking Faustian bargain of the Death Note. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the tragedy. That's the complexity of it. And the rules, and they make a point in this film of being like, God, there's so many rules in here. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure there are, so that you can contrive whatever plot point you want. Like, you know, like, they don't tell you what the rules are, and they tell you the basic ones, but they make a point of there being so many. And that's one of them, and it pissed me off because I was like, well, yeah, it shouldn't be reversible, and guess what? The climax is contingent on the reversible rule. That's how he gets away with it in the end. And it's the opposite of what I said about how none of the rules feel like they're setting things up. Every new rule in this is like, this is a Chekhov's gun being loaded. This is a Chekhov's gun being loaded. It fucking sucks, man. Like, they're so transparently plot setups, and I hated the reversal one the most. And they make Light in this movie, played by Nat Wolff. He is more heroic. He is a better person, I guess. Instead of him being responsible for killing all the agents tailing him, it turns out this was the work of the invented for the movie girlfriend, who I know is technically supposed to be Misa, but isn't really.
Well, Adam Wingard apparently said that it's not based on Misa. It's like, it's the Tiny Toons of Light. That like they gave Light Turner, Light Yagami's, I'm gonna make a new world with no crime, and then they gave Mia all his sociopathic qualities.
Bad. Because guess what? Ryuk's barely their function in this story is Adam Wingard. Guess what he's supposed to do? He's a literal devil on his shoulder. And in this they go, no, we'll make this girl be the literal devil on his shoulder.
It's almost like, it screams of like not knowing how to write internal conflict, so you just have to make it external.
Yeah. I've written here, this is so rivetingly bad, which I guess, I can't remember why I wrote that, but I guess it's just, I'm excited to discuss how bad this is.
Well, yeah, like this is the thing, because you walked out of the movie the first time you saw it. But like, you hated it on a different level, you know? You were just like, this is a bad movie. But like, now
it's hurt my feelings.
It's offensively bad. Like, it's actually, like, you messaged me last night. You said it's fascinating. It's like it's written by someone who hates Death Note.
Yeah.
And like, that's the thing. It's like, I don't see how anyone who liked the series enough to write a film based on it would write this.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's insane. I can see why Lakeith Stanfield would be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm keen to play Al. He seems like the kind of the dude who would who would be into it and that's why he would take on the role. But
he's so unnotable in this movie as well.
He does some of the quirks and
sure. Lakeith Stanfield is one of my favorite actors, right?
Yeah.
He is bad in this movie. Well, he's not bad. He's just first of all, it's a performance which he doesn't get anything to do, but also I'd say his interpretation of the character is like far too emotional. I don't want to see Al be like, where's Watara? Where is he? Like he's like on the brink of tears. I'm like, no, Al is.
Well, and he grabs a gun as well, which feels so antithetical to the character of Al.
Al is off-puttingly awkward and calm to the point where it's uncomfortable for everyone. Like, that's who Al is. And your artistic license is valid, and they're doing an adaptation. And I think it is good casting for an American L,
Yeah.
but they don't do anything with it. And I want to talk about Willem Dafoe as the voice of Ryuk. I get why this is the best casting of all time, as you said. But it also, was this not fan casting? Is this not realized fan casting?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, right? This feels like it's never a good idea when fans campaign for someone to play a role and then they get the role. Like, I'm so glad Zachary Levi plays Shazam and John Cena doesn't, for example. You know? It feels too obvious. Like, the Japanese voice is basically Defoe-esque. Or as it looks when written down, it's Defoe-esque. Because Defoe ends in an E.
Yeah. There is the Japanese voice of Ryuk is very blah blah blah. Humans are so interesting, but written in Japanese, obviously. Whereas and I watched like a compilation of the different voices in each dub, and everyone else decided to make him sinister, which is interesting because the whole point of the character really is that he looks sinister, but he's a non-partisan
so you
observer.
think there's some juxtaposition that gets lost in translation?
Yeah. And so I mean, like the original voice of Ryuk in the English dub is great, and I think because you never see Ryuk properly in this. He's always in shadow or from the back
it's not bad. I'd love to hate on it, but it works.
Well, the glimpses you get of his face, it's like because you could embrace the Defoe-ness of Ryuk, but instead you hide it, but then still have him voice it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've written two options for who could have played Ryuk in this movie. Gilbert Gottfried. Now, hear me out. Obviously, that started as a joke, but then I got to thinking, I was like, does Gilbert Gottfried need a win? Does Gilbert Gottfried need to show the world?
Well, you're essentially he's playing Iago again.
Yeah, but imagine if he took it real seriously. What is Gilbert Gottfried's real voice?
Do the voice?
What is his real voice?
It's very soft spoken. There's a clip on YouTube you can listen to.
And my other and bear in mind, I agree with the conceit that you get the biggest actor to play Ryuk, right?
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson or Morgan Freeman. Bucket list it.
Yeah.
Bucket list it. Huh?
Do you know who actually, and you're going to like this, who actually would be, I reckon, great casting as Ryuk and would preserve that initial, the Japanese intention?
Mm.
Adam Driver.
I was going to say that, but I feel like I always cast Adam Driver.
Yeah, you do. But, like his because his voice
No, Adam Driver would be a bit of Light. But that's just because Light is Kylo Ren.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, I want that speaking of alternate casting, Zac Efron as Light, that was such an intriguing idea for such a long time. By the time this came out, he'd aged out of the role. I mean, you could convolute it in a way. He could maybe play like a 21, 22-year-old kind of thing, but because that would, and it's Zach, like give us a chance, we'll give you a chance to do your Ted Bundy thing, and now you don't have to make the Ted Bundy movie, and. You would preserve that element of Light that he's hot and popular, and you can take artistic license through adaptation, but it would be cool to see Zac Efron try and pull off a role like that, and preserve that thing, and really make it a lot more obvious for Western audiences.
And Richard, not only was Zac Efron attached to play Light back in 2007 when this movie was greenlit, but
when
you
mentioned High School Musical.
You mentioned Gus Van Sant was attached to direct. Do you know who was attached before Gus Van Sant?
I'm gonna know when you say it, but I can't remember.
Shane Black was attached to direct.
Yes, yeah.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, or The Predators, or The Nice Guys, or Iron Man 3's Shane Black.
Or Lethal Weapon.
Yeah. And a Shane Black directed Death Note starring Zac Efron. Like, you need to imagine what Shane Black's style is and superimpose that onto Death Note. And it's like, I think I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, like,
as with
'cause you
every
think about-
movie that Shane Black lands, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you think about something like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and someone brought this up on the Discord, but it's like, it's Kiss Kiss Bang Bang has a very convoluted plot.
Mm.
And it's like, it's one of those films that I love it, but if you asked me like what happens in it, I don't know how much of the plot I'd be able to retell. Same with The Nice Guys.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I couldn't tell you what the mechanics of the plot are.
Yeah, even while I'm watching it, if you go, oh, why is this character doing that? I have no fucking clue.
I'd be like, what do you? I don't know.
Yeah.
So apparently Shane Black, I wasn't sure, it was written kind of weirdly, but I think he left the project because Warner Bros., who originally owned the film rights, they wanted to change Light's motivation from justice to vengeance. I'm doing air quotes, whatever that means, and to completely remove Shinigami from the story. So sort of what we were saying at the top of the episode. So in terms of Nat Wolff as Light, I think he's horrible. I'd say the bit of the problem is that this movie goes back to what I was saying about Light being a weenie incel. I don't think Adam Wingard nor Nat Wolff understood this, and so not only is Light too nice, but he's also too cool. Ironically, it's the opposite. In the anime and the Japanese films, it's like he is really popular, but he's an incel. In this, it's like he's really unpopular, but he's too cool. He's not, it's the arrogance. The arrogance is missing. He's less like a person who thinks he's better than everyone and therefore he should be the god of the new world, and more like a character who's like, everyone should be so nice to, like, there's so much, like, he's too genuine. His beliefs are too genuine that I don't think he would be Kira. You know?
The fact that he, like, just immediately, like, he keeps checking out Margaret Qualley's Mia, and she talks to him and he's like, oh, hey, check out this Death Note. And it's like,
yeah, it's bad stuff.
Like, there's such a betrayal of the character.
Yeah.
But I also, like, speaking of performances specifically, I did mention there are a couple of sexy moments in this film. And one of them, like, took me by surprise. So it's the bit, so Mia, Light finds out that it was Mia that killed all the FBI agents. And he confronts her about it. And Light tried to do the reverse thing on Watari. And but then Mia stops him, and he realizes, oh, fuck, it's because you wrote my name in the Death Note and you want to be able to reverse it. And she, like, tells him, like, Light Turner, his heart stops beating at midnight, and I wanted you to be the reversed one. And fuck, bro, it's sexy as hell. Like, the way she says, like, I've sealed your fate, I'm going to murder you. It's fucking hot. It's so hot.
I dream of being told that one day.
Yeah, and then there's also the bit, it's weird, but it's, again, because Margaret Qualley is beautiful, it's like this weirdly sexy bit when there's a website made that's like, these people should die by Kira, and Light's, well, like, oh, well, what if some guy, like, someone, like, fucked a guy's girlfriend and he puts their name on, and she's like, what if some guy fucked me? And again, it's like, this shouldn't be in my Death Note movie, but I don't know why it's doing it for me.
I agree that's a sexy delivery in a vacuum. In the film, it's like, would you kill a guy if he fucked me? And he's like, yeah, I'd kill him. And immediately the sexiness is sapped out of the scene.
That's the thing. In a
then she
vacuum,
moves on
it's
as well.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just Margaret Qualley with this weirdly, like, fucking hot delivery of these two bits.
Hey, here's the ace in my sleeve for the discussion about Nat Wolff and Light, though.
Oh, yeah, should we stop recording? And
no, it's very quick. We stop recording after an hour, by the way, everyone, because I'm keeping that in. You want to know who should have played, or at least what a good example of what an American Light is? Watch fucking Chronicle. Dane DeHaan's character in Chronicle.
Fuck, yes.
That's fucking who Light is. Like, almost to the point where he shouldn't play Light because it's the same character. That's who Light is.
Yeah, he's too good casting. Like,
yeah.
I remember thinking that in 2016.
You take the ace away from me. You're like,
no,
AJ, I also thought of this. You're not the only one. You're not capable of surprising me with a good idea. I already thought of it.
I am God of this new world.
Very, I'm enjoying myself. Watching these movies, I was like, I'm going to enjoy this podcast. Not that I usually don't, but just, MVP, the Oscars. I was like, yep, gotta crank these out.
God, if only had stayed on one more episode. He would have heard us having fun with this one. But I will say, so I before this, and it's probably dumb to bring this up during the discussion about the Netflix one, but the Netflix one being so bad kind of highlights how good the rest of it is, and I think how good the core story is.
It's a fascinating case study in multiple people adapting the same thing. It's very fascinating in that regard.
But so I want to officially submit a running joke into Cult Popture canon.
Yeah,
and not so much a running joke. So
very rarely do officially submitted ones make it in, Richard. It's always the organic ones that keep going.
So we've brought up a few times, and there was a fun little internet error which prevented this being properly explained. But I mentioned that I can't remember who it was now, but that someone gets it. And you asked me to explain myself, but your internet crapped out and I didn't hear
it. Never again.
But we talk about you would have heard us say on the show, whether you're aware of whether you notice it or not, that we quite often say like, this person, like, they get it, man. They get it.
Kevin Feige gets it.
Kevin Feige gets it, and it's one of these things that's like, it's become this honor we bestow upon people when we're given like behind the scenes knowledge in some way that this person like understands. So Kevin Feige was like the leaked emails of how to fix Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it's like, yeah, like he gets it. And it was like, we even had it with like, it's not always on that scale. We had it when we were approaching people for the Barbie podcast. And there were people that were like, oh, okay, so what are you doing? And some of them were like, oh, I'm 20 minutes in the middle of an 18-hour podcast. Fucking sweet. That's hilarious. And it's like, yes, you get it, like, you understand.
Dude, hey, if I can give a shout out to Tim Batt, our podcast big brother, for this, when I was having a horrible day trying to upload the full unbroken 18-hour episode to our podcast platform, which I couldn't do, by the way, spoilers if you haven't seen that, I'm all over the internet. I'm on Reddit. Hey, how do I make an 18-hour podcast small enough but still not lose any quality? Every comment, Richard, every comment is just split it up. Acast, I email them, hey, can you make an exception for me? They're like, just split it up. I'm like, I fucking don't. I tell Tim, he's like, that sucks, man. You should be able to upload it as one solid piece. And I was like, fuck yeah, man. Like, it's an art. I hate to call my podcast my art, but it's an artistic vision. And I say that unironically. I know it sounds silly to say I unironically believe my Barbie
18-hour podcast on the 37 Barbie films is my artist. Yeah, but it is. And it's like, and the whole point of that was that we wanted to release it as one big thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like another example is like Robert Englund talking about Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and just about how he embraced like the homoerotic subtext.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And so if you hear us talking about like, he gets it or she gets it, they get it,
We've finally explained it 2 hours in to the Death Note episode.
Yeah, when no one got it. Adam Wingard famously doesn't get it. Yeah. But one other thing that I want to officially submit, and I hope that we can do it for Death Note, is that I want to say, like, Death Note, apart from the Netflix one, Death Note fucking rocks.
Okay,
we've said things like there's a very specific like quality and tone when something fucking rocks.
I know exactly what you mean, Richard, because I got the same feeling watching the Japanese Death Note movies as I got watching Fright Night 2011.
Fright Night 2011, yeah.
They fucking rock. It's not the same as being it's a great or a good movie. They can be both. And in Death Note's case it is. And Fright Night case, Fright Night might not be a great movie, but it fucking rocks. It's rock and roll. Like it's doing something effectively where it succeeds in a very it's like eating a good meal, I guess. Not necessarily a great meal, but a meal that makes you feel really good. It's getting drunk. It's
exactly what you feel like. Yeah. and it's but yeah, I wanted to say, because I had that feeling, and I was like, "Oh, it fucking rocks!" And I want to say because I remember that so fondly when we both just agreed that Fright Night 2011 fucking rocks,
Yeah.
and I would love that to be like an official, and not necessarily like we give this the fucking rock seal of approval, but now when we say it, that people will know what an honor that is to bestow upon something.
Yes. However, I do want to put a caveat in there. We need to be very gentle when we don't agree that something fucking rocks, because I don't want to come in.
I think that's the beauty of something fucking rocking is that we agree, and that's why I was so like I wanted to know what you thought of Death Note before I said it, especially those first two Japanese movies, because they
I just don't want to come in with a movie and be like, it fucking rocks. And you'd be like, no, AJ, it doesn't. We need to, you can disagree, but it's a vulnerable thing to say something fucking rocks.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, would you like to know the response to criticisms of the American Death Note being whitewashed?
Yes.
So, like Ghost in the Shell had it. Dragon Ball Evolution had it where like the people are like, this is an Asian thing that all the characters are white. Technically Lakeith Stanfield is black. Lakeith Stanfield is black. And so whitewashing, maybe it's more there are no Asian like main characters.
Well, except for Watari.
That's true. So anyway,
but even he's like, that's that thing of like he's in a subservient role.
Yeah. Here's what the producers of Death Note 2017 said, and I this is such a strange statement to me. Our vision for Death Note has always been to introduce the world to this dark and mysterious masterpiece. The talent and diversity represented in our cast, writing, and producing teams reflect our belief in staying true to the story's concept of moral relevance, a universal theme that knows no racial boundaries. It knows no racial boundaries, and so we're casting white people. What? Yeah, what an uncomfortable statement, right? Like, that's so strange.
The whitewashing thing, and this was like that with the American remake of Your Name, that Toho gets it, because they Toho said like, Americanize the shit out of it. If we wanted to, if we wanted to cast an all Japanese cast, we would make it. And in this case, they did, and it was great. And so it's like, set it in, like it's and the fact that it's not like he comes out and he says, oh, my name's Light Yagami. It's written with the kanji for moon, but it's like, like they've fully Americanized it, and that is not entirely like, it's also all the bad that comes with Americanizing something.
It's more Netflixized than Americanized.
Yes, sure. But I'm not. This is an adaptation. Like it's an American adaptation rather than a live action version of the anime kind of thing. Yeah. Which I'm fine with on paper. This was terrible. Yeah. But it's but also I'm not the affected group. So
What did you say the name of the mysterious author of the manga is?
Tsugumi Oba.
Yeah, okay. So Tsugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata. Do you know who that is?
Takeshi Obata.
Yeah.
The illustrator.
Okay. So do you want to know what they said on this film?
What?
In a good way, it both followed and diverged from the original work, so the film can be enjoyed, of course, by not only the fans, but also by a much larger and wider audience. That sounds like a statement from people who fucking hated the movie they're contractually obliged to say that they endorse. All right, we're nearly towards the end now. I do have all the dumb IMDb trivia is in this movie, because the IMDb trivia for the first four, the Japanese movies, very sensible, very succinct. There's not a lot of it per movie, which was nice because I hate scrolling through IMDb trivia. So if you don't know, IMDb trivia is user submitted, which often means it's just written very stupidly. And so here is some pieces of dumb IMDb trivia for Death Note 2017. Producer Roy Lee stated that the film is definitely for adults. It has a 0 chance it will get below an R rating. He also stated that it will be one of the first manga adaptations that feels very grounded, but still has fantastical elements. This means fucking nothing, man.
Yeah, it's a very it's similar to that. It's like, this is a quote from someone who's contractually obligated to say this.
Yeah. To prepare for his role in the film, Nat Wolff got his own Death Note and wrote in it to get into the mindset of the character of Light Turner. What?
Insane. He got he bought a blank notebook and wrote names in it, and this got him into character. He didn't kill anyone. That's how you would get into character, Nat. It's insane. Nothing that you did is remarkable. You practiced your handwriting. Yeah. You got your pen license.
Your brother is a better actor than you.
He is.
He is. Here's another piece of trivia. Keep an eye out. Ryuk makes split-second appearances throughout the film. He also makes minute-long appearances throughout the film. Before Detective James Turner meets Al in person, he interacts with him first on a computer screen interface, which is simply the letter L. This is an homage to the anime, where Al as a character is not physically seen in person for several episodes, and until then is only seen as a disembodied voice on a computer screen interface with just the letter L. So, adapting the anime is an homage to the anime. In the Harry Potter movies, Harry Potter has a scar on his forehead. This is an homage to the book where Harry Potter has a scar on his forehead. Mia says that the Death Note can, quote, change the world. This is a homage to Death Note. Al changed the world. 2008. And finally, in an interview before production started, director Adam Wingard was quick to confirm that the film will stay true to the bloodiness and maturity of the anime source material. He promised it would have extreme nudity and a ton of violence. But after it was released, there was little violence and only brief nudity.
I'd say the violence is gratuitous. There's a
but there's only brief nudity.
There's a decent amount of violence and gratuitous violence in there, especially when, like I said before, that to me the whole point of Kira is that it's heart attacks. It's the silent killer. Yeah. Like staying true to the bloody, like there's a very high body count, but it's not bloody.
Yeah. And I've also got a couple of IMDb goofs here. So these are goofs from the film. Both of these are in the section incorrectly regarded as goofs. So sorry, they're not actually goofs.
You got me all hyped up for goofs.
I'm going to read out 2 examples. Here's the first one. Ryuk says that nobody has been able to write his name in the Death Note several times and says that the previous owners have only been able to write 2 of the 4 letters that make up his name. But when Light is reading the rules, the phrase Ryuk is not to be trusted is clearly seen. However, Ryuk is referring to someone writing his name to be killed, since what we saw was just a warning. This is why the writer wasn't killed before he or she could finish. And this is the second piece of IMDb goof. When Light threatens to write Ryuk's name in the notebook, Ryuk says that no one has written past the second letter in his name. Prior to this conversation, Light read a note that said, "Do not trust Ryuk, he is not your friend or pet," meaning Light should have known it wouldn't work on him and that someone had gotten past writing Ryuk's name. However, what we saw written was a warning, not a notice of death, a death note, of you will. So maybe there's different rules for that. There is a lot of rules after all. Plus, who says Ryuk is his real name? Oh my god, IMDb drives me insane. Delete it. Delete the website. For all it can do, Wikipedia does it better. All right, Richard. How do you rank the Death Note movies?
1 and 2 are so on par with each other for me. I think I ranked 2 higher than 1 in my ratings. But that was because I was so amazed by how much better the ending was than in the anime.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like 1 and 2. then Light Up the New World, then I'll Change the World, and then
every other movie.
every other movie, and then Death Note 2017.
I would say the same. I'd probably swap 1 and 2. I think I liked 1 the most in the end.
Yeah, sure.
All right, we talk about titles a lot on this podcast. I don't have too much to say. They're very Japanese titles. Like you wouldn't get an American film called Light Up the New World or Change the World.
Yeah.
So I don't have too much to say. Do you have anything you wanted to say on the titles?
I feel like the titles could be more Japanese. Super Kill Notebook.
Alrighty, well that brings us to Continue the Franchise. This is our segment where we pitch continuations of the franchise. But before we get to that, suffice to say there are plenty of continuations of Death Note. Probably too many to list all of here. But after the like original manga and the anime, you've got novels and video games, as well as an off-Broadway musical and even a 2015 live-action TV series, both of which yet again just adapt the original story. I didn't know about the TV series.
Yeah, there's a live action series. I think it's only like 6 episodes or something.
11.
Like 11, yeah. It's not many, but and then it has and there's also like a 3-part series which leads into Light Up the New World.
Correct.
And there's also have you got more that you want to say?
In the world of extracurricular Japanese films, some pretty interesting examples include the 3-episode mini. It's a web series. I think they're very short. Called Death Note: New Generation, which has the characters from Light Up the New World and leads into it. You right?
Yeah, I just read your review for Death Note 2017.
Oh, you didn't see it until now? That's great.
No, I saw it before, but I just remembered that last night we were doing impressions of Ryuk. But do you want to do your impression of Ryuk?
The first one I did?
Yeah.
Okay, here's my impression of Ryuk. It's like... Like, baby! You gotta write a cause of death after 40 seconds! Come on! That's not my joke, for the record. That's that specific iteration of using Death Note characters is my joke, but that's a TikToker I follow.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then we did Ryuka's Borat. Which
we did Ryuka's. Like. The imagination can run wild with our Borat Ryuka impressions.
Just like, think of all the impressions you can do. You go straight to Borat.
Yeah. A short film made up of deleted scenes from I'll Change the World was also released. And this was called The Man Who Was Made a Fool of by Al the Most, Detective Matsuda's Case File. This is some translated into English, then back into Japanese, then back into English shit. The Man Who Was Made a Fool of by Al the Most.
It's also just called Matsuda Spin-Off.
Yes, that didn't seem like an actual title though. So
it's funny. Yeah, that's just like, yeah.
Probably more relevant to this conversation though is that the Netflix's Death Note is inexplicably getting a sequel, Richard. On August 22nd, 2018, it was announced through a THR report that a sequel's in the works, and Greg Russo is reportedly writing the script after Sarandos called the film a sizable success. On April 20th, 2021, so how long ago was that? Half a month ago?
What day?
April 20th.
Jesus, that was like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Russo revealed that the sequel will be more faithful to the manga than the first film. All right.
That's Greg Russo, who's written Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, and Mortal Kombat 2021.
Both of those are upcoming. Well, I mean, Mortal Kombat's out, but Welcome to Raccoon City isn't out yet.
Yeah.
What is your Continue the Franchise, big boy?
I was going to say as well, actually, there's another important Continue the Franchise that I feel like is worth mentioning.
Yep.
Which is the Death Note Akira story, or Akira story, which it came out last year, I believe, and it's like a one-shot manga, and it's about a US president who looks very much like Donald Trump, getting his hands on the Death Note, and there's a whole other story, but this was kind of the main thing that made headlines, is that like there's a Trump allegory in the new Death Note manga, and been a new there's been new rules added, and one of them is that if you buy or sell the Death Note, you'll die. And Trump essentially buys the Death Note, I think, to try essentially choosing himself over his country. And then Rick's like, okay, sweet, you're gonna die, and then he cries like a little baby.
Interesting. Is it good?
Yeah. I don't really think so.
Okay.
What? Yeah, my continue the franchise.
The
thing
tell
is,
me.
I'm trying so hard to think of where you would take the Netflix canon, how you can go from where that film ended to then take it to a good place.
Mm.
Al just straight up knows, like, he told him that he's Kira, and he's like, okay, cool, and then nothing happened. Like, you actually just need to start again.
Yeah, I'd take a start again. I think the first two Japanese movies are great blueprints for making a big budget.
Yeah, that's
American
the thing. It proves it works.
Yeah.
Just fucking adapt those.
Yeah,
beat for beat, shot for shot. But yeah, I would love to see an HBO series of it. I would love the proper Americanization of this. I like watching this. I was like, I want a version of this that I can show my dad. You
nice.
know, like we watched Breaking Bad together, and it's like, oh, it's such an interesting story that I wish it wasn't only in these like kind of inaccessible mediums.
Yeah,
because a lot of people turn their nose up at anime, and watching like these Japanese films is like a little bit, they're not the best made films and stuff like that. But there's you're captivated by the strength of the story, and I would love a faithful adaptation of that. And I would love to see an American version of that. I was trying like the combo of Bong Joon-ho and Adam McKay that are making a Parasite TV series. Fucking let them do a Death Note series.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that'd be great voices behind a Death Note series, I think. Nice. And yeah, as for casting, I was kind of looking at actors who are like around the same age, and I guess you've got all your like, I don't know, there's that whole group of like interchangeable actors that are like Ansel Elgort.
I don't think he's going to get any.
Ty Sheridan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like just any one of them, I guess, is like they'll probably get it. Timothy Chalamet could be light. Al, sorry.
Yeah.
Just because any like early 20s role, it's get Timothy Chalamet.
Nice.
Yeah, and I also think that because I didn't know that the subs called the Shinigami Reapers, and it's like it's kind of cool to, instead of trying to be like, oh yeah, we're doing like the Shinigami, but we're not calling them that. It's like, give us like an actual Grim Reaper.
Sure. Yeah.
That follows Light Around. That'd be cool.
Nice. What about it's a crossover between Death Note and Final Destination?
I thought I thought you were going to say a crossover between Death Note and Click. And get Christopher Walken working at Bed Bath & Beyond, follows him down. He's like, I'm the angel of death.
Oh my god. Very nice. All right, my continue the franchise, Richard. It's a continuation. Maybe it's an anime series. Maybe it's a live action. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The point is, I've got a new chapter that I want to see in the Death Note world, and it's called Death Note, Eat the Rich. And here's what it's about. It's about a lower-class 20-something who discovers the Death Note and immediately begins using it to kill off the 1%, stipulating in the cause of death section that each billionaire donates their enormous wealth to charities and organizations tasked with solving poverty and inequality in the world. However, as it becomes apparent that someone is coming after the rich, the world's remaining billionaires obscure their identities and begin attempting to catch the new Kira using the plethora of resources at their disposal, including starting a smear campaign which brainwashes many members of the working class to be staunchly opposed to the new Kira's targets, and even in the face of world hunger being fixed and the gap between the rich and the poor shrinking. Because I came up with this idea because I was like, this is what I'd do if I got the Death Note, right? I would try to make.
I was surprised we haven't brought that up yet.
Yeah. I would kill Jeff Bezos. I would kill Mark Zuckerberg.
What
right?
would be a cool thing that you could incorporate into that is that the new kidder kills Jeff Bezos straight away, sure, and then announces like, at this time every day, I'm going to kill the richest person in the world, and so all the billionaires then have to start like donating, getting rid of their money, so that they're not the
Great
number
idea.
one.
Great idea. And what is cool, because in real class structure discourse, you get the people who, like, how many people like stan Elon Musk of all the billionaires? They, like they're diehard defending these people who are. They think you're bugs. They'll crush you like an ant, and so that's part of it too. Is there's a class traitorism aspect to it where there are people who are of the same class as our new kidder who are like, no, what you're doing is wrong, and they never consider the fact that like, well, the billionaires would kill you,
And then it's revealed that the new kidder is a billionaire.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I didn't want to make it so that the Kira in this version, for whoever they are as a person, I don't want to corrupt them. I don't want to tell a story of how, maybe it's not a good idea to kill billionaires. That's where I originally was taking this. But then I was like, no, that's not what I believe. And also, what would happen would be the rich and the powerful would do their rich and powerful thing and find a way to get you, to kill you. So it's actually it's the ultimate David and Goliath story of the biggest Goliath
this time,
there is.
David wins.
Well, I don't know what happens in the end, but there, I think that's a relatively interesting place to take Death Note in a modern setting.
And so Death Note Eat the Rich, what part of Eat the Rich is randomly capitalized?
Okay, good question. Let's say the main character is it's Richard, so it's Eat the Rich.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Richard, I am adding Death Note to our franchise ranking. This is
while we do that. What would legitimately do you think you would use the Death Note?
No, I'd probably do what I just said. Yeah, I think so. I think I disrespect billionaires so much that that would be the only type of person I would have no qualms. Specifically to donate their money. Them dying is just a part.
Right, yeah, because you could be like Jeff Bezos donates his entire fortune to the Cop Option Patreon, and then
yeah, exactly.
Points the finger pretty clearly, especially when the movie's called Eat the Rich.
Age 8 the Rich. What would you do with it? Do you think you'd use it?
I would probably...
I would kill the poor, AJ.
I'm trying to think of who I would test it on. Or if I would even be... Because once you touch the Death Note, you can then see Ryuk, so it's immediately introducing you this involves the supernatural kind of thing. So if I just found a notebook, you'd be like, oh, fucking AJ then. That'll show him. Yeah, you would test it on a celebrity that you don't like, essentially. And Jeff Bezos is a great example.
Use an expense because the world is better without billionaires. So you'd want to use it on someone who, if they weren't in the world would be better.
Yeah, Ian Watkins from Lost Prophets.
Great! What a great idea. Let's not go into why, because I think that's maybe a little too heavy for this episode. But that's a great example.
But it would also have to be someone that you would be notified fairly quickly about their death to prove it. But I feel like I would use it on a random or someone, one of my many mortal enemies, and then feel real bad about it.
Yeah.
But then as time would go on, I'd be like,
I'm the god of the new world.
I am.
Okay, so over on our Letterboxd, on the Cult Popular Letterboxd, we've got a list of the 125 franchises that we have ranked, and we're going to rank Death Note in here. Now, you said to me earlier this week, it's such a shame how much the 2017 film drags down the rest of the series. Yeah. Richard, what if I were to remind you that we actually rank... At the moment, there's talk of us changing this. As the list is currently written, we don't we rank multi-canon franchises as separate franchises, and we have specifically not ranked singular films before, which theoretically means that until we do our re-ranking episode, which is coming soon, end of 2021, where we change that and fold all franchises under the same banner into one franchise, which is what I think people want us to do.
I don't know. We'll work it out between now and then.
Yeah. That means that Death Note, the Japanese series, is all we are ranking here, if you want to play it that way.
Yeah.
I will say, I think you need to take a breath and think about where this should be ranked, because it should be
to
high.
the top 2.
I don't know if
it's
it breaks...
better than The Godfather.
I don't know if it breaks top 10, which I think is what you're gunning for.
Sure. Anyway, like, what I wanted to say is that I actually think that, like, okay, these 4 Japanese films are all good.
Mm-hmm.
We can both agree on that. But I think there's something so, like, refreshingly pure about this franchise that we've got, like, these 2 films that tell a very complete story, and that they're tied together. They're of equal quality, equal production. There was no one changed actors or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then you have, like, a legit spin-off, like a perfectly dictionary definition spin-off.
Yeah.
And then you have a distant sequel, and one that kind of nails the distant sequel genre. Which is something that's very rare to happen. And then it's one of those things that, like, if we're talking about, like, the legacy of the franchise, even the fact that it has, like, a shitty Netflix adaptation, like the shitty American adaptation, like, kind of adds to the story of the franchise, despite the film being so bad.
Yeah.
It's like, it's this interesting thing that it's like, it's these 2 films.
It's collected all the types of
sequels.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to throw something out to you.
Yeah.
This is higher than maybe I think it is, but I'm trying to meet you in the middle.
Right.
What do you think about placing it at 12 above Shrek? But lower than Terminator?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, Terminator definitely has higher highs, but it has more lows than this.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, well, there it is. This is the 12th best franchise we've watched. Richard, there's only one more thing to do. Social plugs. No. While I do the social
more
plugs,
like
though,
hair plugs.
Can you please go onto our Patreon, Richard, and let us know what patrons have voted will be the next episode of Film Franchise Fortnights, the next franchise we cover. It is over on our Patreon, patreon.com/cultpopture if you want to get involved. These franchise votes are getting ugly. Legit, they are getting ugly. We're
going to stop doing them.
It's getting mean-spirited. It's getting. I'm kidding. It's certainly heated up in the recent months when we've had more people come to the Patreon. There has been campaigning in the Discord. If you are on the Patreon and you suggest a franchise, hop into the Discord. You can actually campaign for the franchise that you want to win. But before you reveal to us, Richard, what the new franchise is, I want you to just invite everyone to go over to our Facebook page or our Instagram or our Twitter or our YouTube channels. We've got 2 YouTube channels. One of them's called Cult Popture, where we post video essays. Just released one on Borat. Go check that out. We've also got Cult Popture again, which is where you might be listening to this. It's where we post podcasts and things like that. Patreon.com/Cult Popture. The Discord, you can find a link to our Discord in the show notes below. All these places are places that you can support us. Richard, tell me the news.
So do you know? Do you legitimately?
I know it's between 2.
This is one of the closest races we've ever had. Yeah. And if you like, I'll get you can vouch. Like you can check it as well. Make sure that's right. But once I say this, I'm going to delete the post.
Okay. I'll pull it up, but I won't look, so you can still reveal it to me.
So the film franchise we're going to be covering next fortnight. Well, not just next fortnight. It might take us a little while to get through.
Oh, God.
It's Planet of the Apes.
Wow.
Which, after a very, very, very close race, has won by 1 vote. I'm going to refresh the page just to double check. Oh my god, it lost. No,
I would absolutely keep that in if it did actually lose.
oh yeah, 100%. All right. Yeah. No, it looks like it's gonna be
All right, so
Planet of the Apes.
that'll be the next 2 weeks. What we could do is we could try watch them all in a week and do.
Do the originals next week and then
do the originals next week because we haven't got a plan for an off week yet. We were gonna split it up and do the originals and then the
Well, the reason we're doing this is that the episode after Planet of the Apes is due to be a redux. It's 5 years since we started the podcast, and for the last couple of years we've been redoing a franchise from our first year because the episodes aren't very good. And we thought it would be fun to open it up this year to our second year of franchises as well. So this means that we could be redoing anything from Back to the Future to Beethoven to The Land Before Time to Godzilla.
Don't give people ideas.
So yeah, we'll work this out off pod, but we'll see how we go. And Planet of the Apes, Planet of the Mapes.
Yeah,
it's not anime, it's Mape.
It's Mape. The worst pun that I've ever read in my life. It looks like you misspelt maybe. All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoyed our discussion on Death Note. Hope you're looking forward to our Planet of the Apes episode. And stay tuned for after this music ends. We're going to do the post-credits scene. Stick around. Love you so much. What a fun episode, Richard. What a.
Did you have fun? Yeah, I think this was a good one.
A real good faith episode. Just two lads discussing movies they both feel the same way about. These are my favourite episodes. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Ka kite,
right.
and we'll see
Love
you next week. Hello and welcome to the post-credits scene. This is a segment at the end of each show where if you donate $5 or more on our Patreon, patreon.com/coldpopshow, you get to give us something to talk about in the post-credits scene. Richard, lay it on me, buddy.
All right, today's post-credits scene comes to us from Sarah Velling.
Hey, Sarah.
Who says, favorite alcoholic beverage and or go-to mixed drink?
I had a Long Island iced tea the other day for the first time, and what a bug! I'm going on a date tonight, and she wants a Long Island iced tea, and I was like, yes, I'll buy you one of them. So that's happening.
Really? How did this come up?
I told her about the Long Island iced tea. So I don't know. It was just very easy to drink.
Like that's the thing, and that's one of those. It's a bit of a cliche because I remember when you said you came over, you're like, I got a Long Island iced tea, and I said, oh, happy 18th birthday, because it is very like it's known for being the most alcoholic drink you can buy.
Right.
It's usually the most expensive on the menu because it's got the most alcohol in it, and it was
expensive
despite the mix of alcohols. It's very palatable, and so it's it's people drink it to get fucked up.
I bought 3 Long Island iced teas.
Yeah.
And it cost me $74. I didn't buy them for myself. I bought 2 for 2 friends.
Yeah.
It cost me $74. What about you? What's your favorite alcoholic mix?
What is my favorite? I love a good margarita.
Yeah.
Like a frozen blended one, especially with a salty rim.
Yep.
A lot of people are like, oh, they wipe the salt out of
it's
their
hard with a moustache. I'll say that.
Like I drink it, I rotate it as I'm taking sips, because I think the hit of salt you get with the limey flavor is bloody fantastic.
It's good.
Other than that, that's probably the only one I'll like go out of my way to make at home as well.
Yeah.
I do. I like a Bailey's coffee as well. Like Bailey's is real good.
Yeah.
I had a Bailey's iced coffee today, which is non-alcoholic, but it's sold. Like you get it in the alcohol section. And I was at the supermarket and was at a self-serve checkout, and then the thing goes off saying it's a restricted item. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like I understand. Like it's in the restriction section. You just have to go, yeah, cool, accepted. Woman came over and was like, can I see some ID? And I was like, do you not think I'm old enough to buy this non-alcoholic drink? And she's like, I don't. That's why I'm asking. I don't think she heard all of what I said. And then I was like, well, I think that's ridiculous. And then she put on my
She
my
burst
date of
into flames.
birth. But yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, I get, non-alcoholic beer. It's like you still want to just double check, but this is just like it's a sugary milk drink for kids.
Yeah.